To receive instant notification each time I upload, please hit the subscribe button and the bell notification.
Helping you along the way. Helping you to make it through another day. Yeah, everything you need to know that you never knew, that you need to know. Well, I got perspective.
Nice little ditty, isn't it? I just love it. And I love Ronnie Mann's voice on that. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Headlines with a Voice and the Lockhart Perspective. Today we have a great guest with us, and we're going to lay some foundation before he joins us. And we're going to actually put down what we're going to talk about today because it's very important that we don't miss any of these points. Obviously, one of the main things I want to talk about is the high influx of illegal aliens and how it plays into the whole scheme of things with all of our cities here in the United States. Because it's just a few major cities that are, and major states that are sanctuary cities and states, it's still going to trickle down into the southern states as it has now, up into other parts, even up into Maine, whether you guys know it or not. So we're going to focus on that. We're also looking today and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use one specific city, one specific state, because I feel like it represents everything that's going on in the U.S. right now today. And I think that if we just focus on one little area, knowing that it does, sort of branch out into other places, that it'll be better for us because we won't be dancing all around. Now, some of the top stories that I'm going to start with right now is the defunding. Now, we're looking primarily at Mayorkas, whether you know it or not. His face is on the thumbnail on both channels. I'm dealing with Mayorkas because the question that I have is, was he just a fall guy that should really have taken the brunt of the punishment, as it were, for this whole thing that just went down when they got rid of him? So I do want to look at that. And I do want to look at how easily it was for them to sort of remove him out of the picture instead of making the person that I believe should have been, responsible, the person who literally took the oath, other than the oath he took to protect our laws and make sure that our laws are followed through with. Whether you know it or not today, yesterday, I should say, in the state of Illinois, specifically Chicago, their school system there has decided to no longer have any police presence on the campus. Now, some will say, well, that's good, but it's really not when you look at some of the things that have been going on in schools throughout the United States as we've had this high influx, especially of the migrants that are going into Chicago. The preponderance of those individuals are Venezuelans. Now, I want you guys to take a look at this story, and we're going to talk about it. But the first thing that I want to show you is right here. Don't you just love it when I sort of mess around? There it is. There it is. I'm going to back this up so you guys can hear it from the beginning. And then we're going to listen to the former Chicago principal. Okay.
Getting the money and reinvesting it by getting all these programs, nursery programs, culinary arts, all these programs for these students so they don't have to go outside of high school, outside of resources just to become the person they want to be when they grow up.
Mixed reaction to a much anticipated decision after much debate. The Chicago Board of Education votes to remove school resource officers from schools by the next school year. Okay, we've seen rallies for and against the safety plan resolution for months. Now here we are. Dr. Joyce Kenner, one of the most respected voices in education here in Chicago, sitting here down with me this morning to react to this controversial vote. Good morning.
Good morning, and how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you
Good.
so much for your time.
You're welcome. You're
Let's
welcome.
hop right into this. So many people are talking about it. To many, this was not a surprise because Mayor Brandon Johnson, even as a candidate, was in support of this. The CTU was behind it. What's your initial response to the vote?
My initial response was I've always been adamantly against removing police officers from the schools. And I would say that if you've never sat in the seat of a principal, never been an administrator of a school, you have no idea what we go through every single day to try to keep our kids safe. For 27 years as principal of Whitney Young High School, every day I would go home and say, I made it through another day without a child getting hurt at our school. And I just truly believe that police officers should not have been removed. I think it should have been a local decision, school decision. Whitney Young is different than other schools.
Yeah.
Other schools are different than Whitney Young. And I just think that it should have been a local school decision whether or not a school needed police officers or not.
Yeah, 3 decades that you spent, the bulk of there at Whitney Young, so respected here in the community. We've never seen a send-off quite like yours.
Thank you.
But it is true that educators here in Chicago have a bigger job than just the books and educating our students. So in recent weeks, we have seen children walk outside of school in the middle of the day and die in shootings in multiple instances. We're talking about life or death types of things here. So do you think this vote, instead of resource officers, it was built on favoring a more holistic approach to school safety? What do you think needs to be included in that?
I think it definitely needs to be included in terms of voices of the school stakeholders. You have to find out what principals think.
Yeah.
You have to find out what students think. You have to find out what teachers think and school staff thinks about school safety. And again, all issues are different at each individual school. And so to look at it holistically, you have to get your stakeholders involved in the decisions that you make relative to a school and what happens in a particular school.
Yeah, a lot of the fight in terms of removing the officers had to do with keeping kids out of what's been built as a school to prison pipeline. Do you think that this will achieve that?
I definitely do not. Yeah, I just think that we need to focus in on our students, and you say a holistic approach to what we are doing with students. And obviously safety is a big issue with that holistic approach. And we just need to have the school stakeholders buy into what we are talking about and have an opportunity for a discussion. At Whitney Young, I brought as many students as I could into a theater with my 2 police officers, and the students were able to sit there and ask our police officers any questions that they wanted to ask. I've always shared with them, as long as it was respectful, you're able to ask those questions. And so they were able to ask the police officers, number one, why are you here? What is your role? What do you think the benefit of you being here in this institution is? And it just was a wonderful exchange of ideals. I've always also believed the police officers' responsibilities are not for discipline. They are for school safety. And sometime I would call the police officers down to my office to ask them about what their thoughts about X, Y, and Z. But they were not there to discipline a student. That was left up to the administrators in the school. So I just think that people need to identify what the needs are for those resource officers or police officers, and then we move forward with that.
Well, if they're talking about a contract that's ending in 2025 and resources being reallocated, because that's been the word that's used, reallocating resources, where do we start with that?
Well, with the $628 million deficit that the Board of Education will be facing in 2025, obviously we're going to have to reallocate some of those resources. But I have always said that the resources, number one, need to follow the students, and number two, it needs to be equitable. Our resources, our financial situation, it's never been equitable across the board with all schools. And I just think that we need, as a system, to look at that and make sure that those dollars are following the students and addressing the needs of each individual student as it impacts their particular schools.
Dr. Joyce Kenner here with us this morning, giving us much wisdom after your years serving this city. And we appreciate what you've done and what you continue to do. We appreciate it.
Okay, so the purpose of me
A
even
surprising
sharing that, let
announcement
me
today
take
by
this
former
off
talk show
right there. So the purpose of me showing that to you was to sort of lay the groundwork for the next story that I'm about to share with you, because it's vitally important to understand that there's always these little bitty reads of information that'll come out, and it may not seem like anything big. Here's a story that I want to share with you. It's about some Guatemalan immigrants or illegal aliens who pretended to be students. And it's been going on for quite some time. You'll find that there are stories that go back as far as 2012, 2014. And I'm sure that if you and I did a lot of digging, we could find some stories that go back even further than that. Here is the danger. Since Venezuelans en masse have been displaced, replaced, moved, whatever you want to call it, to Chicago specifically. Now, let's just paint a picture right quick. These individuals, in my impression, okay, because I talked about it this morning, I believe this whole thing with the Venezuelans mimics what was going on with Cuba when they just allowed all of their worst to come out of their prisons and be taken into Florida, moved into the United States interior. I think this is the same thing. But in as much as I think that, I also believe that they are sending specific groups of individuals to specific cities, specific towns, excuse me, and specific states for a purpose. Now, we all know that Chicago has had a terrible problem with gang violence, with shootings almost every single weekend. We've seen that over the past several years. It went from every weekend to just blending Monday through Sunday. Now they're bringing in these individuals who they've unleashed, in my impression, because they're doing crimes with impunity all over the place. These individuals are brought there. Now, all of a sudden, just gently, they've removed the officers from the schools. This was a continuation of what started when they had the defunding the police. If you remember, there was a 75% request of reduction of the police in Chicago under Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Lori Lightfoot did not go to the extreme with the 75%, but she did do some cuts. And what I've always noticed is sometimes you'll find that they'll say a high number because the lower number is really the number that they attain, that they want to attain. So I believe that when they ask for 75%, and by they I mean the NGOs and the other organizations that were requesting to defund the police in Chicago for such a time as this, those individuals are who I'm referring to. What they had done was they said, we want 75% reduction. Really? They probably only wanted 30. All right. Because they were going to try to do it more over time. Either way it goes, she didn't do 75%, but she did do some. Now we've taken them completely out of the school system. Think about this. Kids are walking out of schools. I have a family member. I'll just use this as a story here. I have a family member who, Flow State, greetings to you, sir, Zara B, all the other creators that are good friends of mine and associates. Hello. So I have a family member who lost a nephew in Chicago, simply walking home from school to home. He was going to take his lunch at home. So on his way home, he was hunted down, and he's no longer with us. Young child, young boy, no more than 16. On the way home from lunch. So now we have removed the security. Now we've removed the RO. So there's no more officers, no more resource officers. Is this really drilling down? This is serious. It really is. Flow State says, I hate having the cops at school. They are conditioning kids for the prisons they populate as adults. Now I'm gonna say this. I don't disagree that there is a prison to a school to prison pipeline. I don't disagree with that. What I'm saying is, when you consider the high influx of individuals that are coming into other cities pretending to be children, going into classes with, there was a 35-year-old man. Let me see if I can find that story. 35-year-old man. He pretended that he was in school. All right, let me just go on ahead and get this for you. This is an older story. And I hope that I can share this with you because it is on another side. Hold on just a moment. Let me see, can we pull this up for you? All right, and I'm gonna open up this window. Okay. Undocumented. I hope you guys can see this. Let me double check because I'm using, what is this thing? You guys know I always forget, not Chrome, the other guy, the little help me Smithers guy. Okay, yeah, you can see it. All right. Undocumented immigrants from Guatemala pretending to be children to enroll in Massachusetts public schools. This is not unheard of. This is an older story, but I'm bringing it up just to show you there has been precedence that this has happened. Judith Flanagan is Judith Flanagan Kennedy, the mayor of Massachusetts at this time, claims that several migrants who have enrolled in Massachusetts public school systems are very well over the maximum age for state education. This was old, again, June 8th, it says, but it's not even June of right now. It's like June of years and years and years ago. All right, so students in Mr. Chelsea science class learn about cell reproduction at Thurgood Marshall Elementary School. That's the picture you see. All right, let's get down to this part. Lucy Francis of Lynn, Massachusetts Center displays a play card and chants slogans during the rally. Felicia, you just jacking up. I'm reading all these little things because it wouldn't give me the story, you piece of garbage. Well, nonetheless, I still know the story. So let me give you a little background on what just happened. When I took the story from another one that was behind a paywall, so I pulled it and put it over here in an immersive reader. But the only thing that it's letting me see in the immersive reader are the public things, the things that are public, like the Getty images and the description that has to go along with it. But here's what I'm going to tell y'all. There were men that were 35 years old who were enrolled in Massachusetts city schools. These men were in the schools with the children, pretending as if they were 16, 17-year-olds. And what they were doing with this feigning to be a child is they were putting the children as well as the educators in harm's way. Why? Because you got people here who obviously are not here for the right purpose. En masse, I am telling you that that's what's going to happen in Chicago. That's what's going to happen. It's not going to be this little small, soft, oops, we made a mistake. No, sir, no, ma'am. It's going to be large amounts of grown folks inside of these schools with these kids because the desire of the individuals who paid for them to get here is to destroy your city, Chicago, Dalton, and any other city inside of any township in Illinois, any other city in neighboring cities in Detroit, Los Angeles, any of those areas. It is to destroy your youth. If not by way of fentanyl coming in through the southern border, then by way of other individuals coming in through the city that you live in, infiltrating your school systems. They did not have enough people to stand up for them in the Chicago area. Those individuals did not stand up and say long ago, no, stop it. It was just a few people who were actually saying, hey, we don't want you to defund the students' resource officers. We don't want that. And I don't really think that there would have been anybody who really would have given a rip. Honestly, I really don't. I don't think that there would have been anybody who gave a rip. I just don't. So while we are waiting, WTF Flow State says, yeah, well, and that's exactly what it is. Grown men and women pretending to be children. I'm going to tell you something. Here's a big issue. We have a lot of people who believe the stories that are given to us to soften us, to lower our drawbridges. Each one of us have one. You may have a drawbridge that sits up a little higher than the girls next to you or the guys next to you, sir. But every single one of us has a drawbridge that is based on an experience that we've had in our life that tells us when there is safety at risk. And the issue here is that media has learned to play and to sort of tickle your hinges on your drawbridge. That tickling and that wiggling and moving that bolt is what they're doing as they're telling you about the sad, violent stories of individuals that need a place to be. They just looking for a better place. Where are they getting the mopeds? Where are the mopeds coming from? In the state of New York, for example, where are the mopeds coming from? Anybody? Does anybody know? Not only are the mopeds a problem or a question, does anybody know where these people are getting all of the resources to come here with brand new clothes on? Some of the people that were in New York were beating up the police officers in very fly gear. Where did that come from? That's in your face. And what you're hearing is what is lowering your drawbridge to receive a blow that could harm not only your community, but you as well. That's the problem. That's the issues. And that's what I'm talking about today. So let's take a look at another video. I'm going to show you guys something else here while we are waiting on Judge to come on in. Let me give this to you because it's very telling. Very telling. I'm going to do everything for Illinois. So we're going to do this right here. We're going to move over because I told you guys that I feel like there's a whole lot more going on to Dalton with that mayor. We're going to go on ahead and look and see what they've decided to do with her, because once Judge gets here, we're going to make sure that we touch all of the topics that you and I have already discussed. Okay. So let me give you guys the full screen so that you guys can see this. And then we're going to move on. Here you go. Now, the trustees have decided to go on ahead and have her removed. But in tandem with that, she's done a lot of retaliation against some of the individuals in the community who own businesses that have actually spoken up and spoken out to the FBI. In retaliation to some of that speaking up, what she's done, and by she, I mean the city's mayor of Dalton and the township supervisor, what she's done is she's actually had raids on people's businesses for simply speaking out about the fact that she would not allow them to get and retain their business licenses so they could continue to take care of their employees and their families, simply because it is alleged that some of these companies are providing services for the trustees, which she has put herself in conflict with by not following up with the laws and rules that they have set there. So this is the trustees, as well as the open vote that they took just yesterday to say, we need to investigate her.
The grown-up thing would be for her to resign. Just get out of here, leave town. But she's not going to do that. You have disgraced this entire village and also disrespected each and every one of us.
In a special board meeting tonight, Dalton trustees voting to investigate controversial Mayor Tiffany Henyard. This comes as we have learned federal agents are investigating her and allegations of corruption.
Our Elizabeth Matthews was inside that heated board meeting. She's live in Dalton. Elizabeth.
Scott and Don, one trustee saying tonight that this is their last resort, their last stance. They cannot continue to stand by and see millions of dollars wasted. Tiffany Henyard didn't show up in person, but she was brought up in conversation and a vote.
Motion passed for resolution number 24-002, calling for investigation of Mayor Tiffany Henyard.
The 4-trustee majority voting unanimously to call for an investigation into Henyard and what they say is the misuse of funds.
The Board of Trustees has repeatedly asked for financial information that we feel is entitled and has been denied that information. So we feel that we need to get intervention from somebody that can force this kind of action.
Who are you asking for that intervention? What bodies?
We're asking the FBI, State's Attorney, Attorney General, and Cook County Sheriff's Office.
Henyard became mayor in 2021, and for at least 2 of the 3 years, Fox 32 has been reporting on allegations of corruption in her capacity as mayor and Thornton Township supervisor. Concerns have led to trustees calling special meetings to get things done.
This meeting is an attempt for this legislative board to save Dalton.
They voted on items including asking for receipts for the mayor's trips and getting keys to Village Hall.
This has been a stain on our community. It's no way that we should be locked out of a place where we pay taxes.
Residents in attendance approving of the board's stance.
This has to stop. She cannot continue to intimidate and gangster her way through this.
We're not giving up because we refuse to let Tahoe Tiffany take our community.
I did reach out to the mayor for comment tonight. I didn't hear back from her, but through a PR company, I did hear back from the village administrator, Keith Freeman. He says in a statement, quote, "This is just another example of a few trustees in the village of Dalton spreading lies and false allegations. These are the same trustees that cut the public safety budget by $3.8 million, eliminated the bond for garbage removal, and have charged over $5 million in frivolous lawsuits that the Dalton taxpayers are stuck with the tab. The residents deserve better than."
Okay, so now I'm going to stop her from talking because we basically got the nuts and bolts and judges on his way in. So I don't want to belabor the time for him. But what we are going to look at right now is what has happened with Tiffany and what they've done in the state of Illinois to request that she stop doing something specific. Illinois Attorney General has ordered a politician's charity to stop soliciting money because it has failed to report how it spends funds and who has benefited. WGN, who has been on the scene, I'm telling you, their investigators previously reported a questionable spending by Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard, who also serves as the Thornton Township supervisor. Thousands of tax dollars have been funneled to the Tiffany Henyard Cares Foundation. It's a township through the township in Dalton. So let's finish. Oh no! Oh, that's so nice of you. Thank you. In the township of Dalton. So now the foundation claims to help cancer patients, but hasn't filed any of the required financial disclosures with the state of Illinois. The Attorney General sent a letter Wednesday threatening legal action to recover money paid to foundation board members and staff. Henyard has not previously responded to questions about the charity, but what she was doing was ripping and running all around town not long ago, showing people that this was her charity and she wanted them to give monies. Now, have you heard of the old-fashioned shakedown? Does anybody remember what the old-fashioned shakedown was back in the day? The old-fashioned shakedown back in the day was where people would say, hey, Dub Will, the old-fashioned shakedown is where people would say, give us the money and we'll protect your business. Give us some money and we will not blow up your business or your establishment. After this commercial break, we're going to take a look at a major shakedown that took place with this woman just recently. It's a shame. And it's got to be us. That's the part that bothers me so much. Why does it got to be us? Hey everyone, it's me, Felicia, of the Lockhart Perspective and Headlines with a Voice. I want to tell you a little secret. This is what I used to do because I don't do it anymore. I would go to the store, buy the barbecue sauce, pour it inside of a bowl, put a whole bunch of different spices, a dash of brown sugar, a dash of maple, and a dash of mustard, stir it all around, and everybody would be like, oh my gosh, this is the best, this is the best. But I was exhausted after all of that, and a lot of times I couldn't remember how many dashes of what I put in it. But I don't have to do that anymore because now I just go to Judge Joe Brown's website and I order his 3-pack of bottled barbecue sauce. It is by far the best, and I do mean the best barbecue sauce I've ever eaten. And when you go to his website and you order his 3-pack, you'll see exactly what I mean. Head on over to jjbbbbq.com and order Judge Joe Brown's barbecue sauce. You'll be glad you did, and you're going to tell me about it. I know you will. All right, here we go.
Someone seen you go in there. And then 2 hours after your story airs,
that police are at both of these establishments.
More controversy in South suburban Dalton. Two popular bars shut down by police just hours after the owners talked to Fox 32. A village trustee also says it's because they're not financially supporting Dalton's mayor, Tiffany Henyard.
Here's Dean Placca with the latest on the corruption investigation.
Is it coincidence or retaliation? Both of the Dalton bars that were raided and shut down last night, we visited the day before as part of our ongoing investigation into allegations of political corruption in Dalton.
They just rushed in here, put police at the front of the door like they was doing a raid on the drug house or something.
A team of Dalton police officers raided and shut down Pablo's Bar and Cafe and Rinky's Bar and Cafe, both located on Sibley, about a block apart.
Everything going peacefully. Nothing going on. It's like 10 police cars came in and they start pushing customers from here. And he said, if you don't leave, we're going to lock you up.
Employees and owners say it's part of an ongoing campaign of harassment by Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard that is costing jobs and money. Their business licenses have been stripped by Dalton, but they've continued to operate with a state license.
I have like over 23 employees. They work from the local township. Now, end of the day, all the employees, they're going to lose their job.
It's ridiculous. We all have mouths to feed. We all have kids. They're not giving us no explanation.
On Monday, we visited both Rinky's and Pablo's to ask about allegations their licenses were being held up for political reasons. Then last evening, we broke the story that FBI agents have questioned at least a half dozen people, including business owners, a former Dalton employee, and an elected official as part of an investigation into Mayor Henyard. Less than 2 hours after our story aired, police raided the two bars.
Someone seen you go in there. And then 2 hours after your story airs, that police are at both of these establishments.
Dalton trustee Tammy Brown says she believes the raids are meant to send a warning to others not to talk. And she believes there's a reason so many Dalton businesses are having trouble getting their licenses renewed.
I'm sure that they were asked to donate, make a donation, and most likely they didn't make a donation. So you don't get a chance to stay open if you don't pay the Queen's ransom.
Now, tomorrow evening, there will be a special public meeting of the trustees opposed to the mayor, in which they plan to take action on the village's finances, getting access to Village Hall. They've been locked out, and welcoming that investigation by federal agencies. Dane Placco, Fox 32, Chicago.
And that story that he was referencing is the one that we saw right before that. Let's take a look at some of the things that, and here is what I'm telling you guys. My mindset is that all of these things play a role in where we are headed as a nation. What we've got to remember is there are layers upon layers upon layers of things. And when we're dealing with immigration, when we're dealing with removing people for obvious reasons, this young lady could be a type, right? Maybe she could have been somebody who was paid to come in and do what she's doing simply because the individual that they want to come in wouldn't have been able to make it and last for as long as they did if they had just pushed this individual to become the mayor. Here's what I'm trying to say. Can you imagine for a moment if there was somebody who they knew the people would not accept? So what they did is they gave them somebody unbelievably atrocious in the interim. Now, when that person is done running amok, you can bring in or enter in the individual that you really do want to have that position. We said this a couple of months ago when I spoke about the high influx of different individuals that could take that place. It could be Mr. Patel, it could be anybody. But the point that I'm making is we got to look at the fact that immigration is something that they're pushing right now. And it's not just standard. It's the illegality of it all. So with that said, some of the things that she has been accused of as the mayor is not letting citizens into public meetings. These are the topics that we're talking about, and our guest is here. It is none other than Judge Joe Brown. That wonderful commercial that you just saw about the barbecue sauce, that's his. You saw how to get some? Go get yourself some, because I eat it all the time. We're going to talk about not letting the citizens in, and that's why I'm so glad that he's here right now, because he understands how things work as it relates to local legislators, as it relates to mayors, as it relates to government. he knows it all, in my impression. And I could say that because I just think he knows everything. So, so that's just me. Judge Joe Brown, welcome, welcome, welcome to the show today. We so appreciate you for being here. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Wonderful, wonderful. We just got to looking at your commercial for
You
the
mean the barbecue
delicious-
thing?
Huh?
You mean the barbecue thing?
The barbecue thing. And so
you know
what
you can
we
get it on Amazon too.
Oh, I didn't know that you could get it
Oh,
on
it's
Amazon.
on Amazon. They've been selling it real quick. We have a little bottleneck right now, literally, because we can't get enough bottles supplied by the supplier to really get what we want out there. But it's been selling, so we've had quite a few shipments that we have delivered and they've gone through. So the product's great. Try it. You tried it. It's
Oh, I love it.
yum,
I
yum.
love it.
See, it's Black History Month. Let me
Yeah,
break
come
down
on now,
to this.
y'all.
I'm collaborating with Chef Damon. He's Beyonce's personal chef. So he changes the old stuff I've been working on for 40 years to something that you can sell in a health food place. We've got Tiffany Haddish is a major investor and a collaborator in the thing. We've got a sister who runs the only female Black-owned USDA certified meat packing plant in the country. And she works it out of Compton, California. We've got Michelle Dukes, who has Poppy's Bourbon. She's the only sister that owns a distillery, and she put something out that is based on her granddaddy's Mississippi moonshine formula. So we've got a lot of Black enterprise going there. So
very good.
we've got Dr. Cheyenne Bryan, who's clinical psychologist. She does commercials and she gives us a little psychological gathering so we can appeal to the inner cute, you know.
Of course.
Sinking your teeth into some meat. And by the way, we also offer chicken links, smoked and raw. We offer beef links, smoked and raw, both of them hot and spicy or mild. And we also have this Beyond Beef stuff for anybody that's vegan but wants to get what it tastes like if you have to go chomp down and chew on something that was once breathing, now dead.
Well,
You know,
Judge, I'm glad you're letting us know
food
about all the
chain
good
thing.
stuff.
So
I'm
anyway,
glad you're-
yeah, we're
No.
trying to get it done. So,
I'm glad you're doing
Boy.
it, and I'm really happy to know that. And you know what? Black enterprise is really important, and I think a lot of people. Here's what I always say: I believe that whomever you are, you should be proud of your community. You should be proud of whatever it is that you do. I'm not a person who is opposed to different groups of individuals, you know, pushing their heritage and being proud of who they are. I think that that's a part of being an American, to be quite honest with you. And with that in mind, I do want to focus on all of the stuff that's being done in the United States that affects all Americans, and they're using the quote unquote Black experience to do it. For example, Letitia James, for example, Tiffany Henyard in Dalton, Illinois. Also, even Fonnie Willis. We're going to talk about those things today. We're talking primarily about how the immigration issue has been sort of pushed in a different way to make everybody a little more sensitive to the plight of the individuals coming across the border. Meanwhile, it reminds me of the wolf in sheep's clothing, because you've got individuals, not all, but some, a great portion, especially looking at what just happened in New York with the police getting beat up. You've got a lot of people coming over here doing harm, specific to Mayorkas, and the fact that they have now impeached him. I want to understand if anybody can see the correlation between his impeachment and what should be going on with somebody who should be impeached. We're going to look at Mayorkas' impeachment right now. I want to look at that. And no, I'm not paying you any money, so come on and get away. All right, so we're going to go ahead and read this, and then we're going to let Judge educate us on this topic because it's important when you're thinking about the scheme of things, being impeached and whatnot. So here we go. In a redo of their first failed attempt, Republicans pushed through the charges over solid Democratic opposition, making the Homeland Security Secretary the first sitting cabinet member to be impeached. The United States House of Representatives voted narrowly last Tuesday to impeach Alejandro N. Mayorkas, the Homeland Security Secretary, in a precedent-shattering vote that charged him with willfully refusing to enforce border laws and breaching the public trust. In a 214 to 213 vote, Republicans barreled past the solid oppositions of the Democrats and reservations in their own ranks to make Mayorkas the first sitting cabinet secretary in the United States history to be impeached. It amounted to a partisan indictment of President Biden's immigration policies by the GOP, which is seeking to use a surge in migration across the United States border with Mexico during his tenure as a political weapon against him and Democrats in this year's election. Mr. Biden condemned the House's vote in a statement on Tuesday night, saying history will not look kindly to House Republicans for their blatant act of unconstitutional partisanship that has targeted an honorable public servant in order to play petty political games, he said. The vote came a week after the House rejected the charges against Mayorkas when Republicans, who controlled the House by a razor-thin margin, tried and failed to muster a majority to approve them. It put Mr. Mayorkas in the company of past presidents and administration officials who've been impeached on allegations of personal corruption and other wrongdoing. But the charges against him broke with history by failing to identify any such offense, instead effectively declaring the policy choices Mr. Mayorkas has carried out a constitutional crime. The approach threatened to lower the bar for impeachments, which already has fallen in recent years, reducing what was once Congress's most potent tool to remove despots from the power to a weapon to be deployed in political fights. Now, Judge Joe Brown,
I'm ready to roll in on that. And you show the incompetence of the American mainstream media by what you just read. That has absolutely nothing to do with what we really need to focus on. First off, Article 2, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution says the president and the vice president of the United States may be impeached, and if convicted by the Senate of the specifications, removed from office. And our Amendment 12 says they can no longer hold office thereafter. Now, we have three categories that permit impeachment, and if conviction follows, removal. One is bribery, two is treason, and three is the commission of what they style high crimes and misdemeanors in office. A high crime is the way they used to read felony. So, do we have arguable felonies? And that's what the impeachment articles charge Mayorkas with, high crimes. Now, what are we talking about? It's interesting. You have a situation where he has taken an oath to uphold American law and the Constitution of the United States. Now, he is likely to claim that he was following orders and the policies of the Biden administration. If he does that, we have a precedent, the Nuremberg war crimes trials against the Nazis. That kind of blew that defense out of the water. In other words, the defense of I was only following orders is not a defense. If he was following these orders and instructions from the Biden administration, that also implicates the current president in an Article 2, Section 4, high crimes and misdemeanors or situation committed in office. this is certainly impeachable activity. What are we talking about? Now, there is this felony category in the federal criminal law. It's known as harboring a fugitive. That also embraces giving aid and comfort or aiding and abetting a fugitive. Now, under American law, border crashing, which is what's going on in the southern border, is a federal crime. The president has essentially ordered his personnel to stand down and not enforce border security. He does not have that option. This is not an item of executive authority. I suppose he could issue a blanket pardon, but that would be unprecedented because pardons specify a given individual, not a category of people. So, if border crossing is a federal crime, a person who does that with the intent to commit a felony or conspiring to commit a felony would certainly qualify as a fugitive lawbreaker. The very act of the illegal crossing makes him a lawbreaker and a fugitive if at large. Giving aid and comfort to a fugitive is defined as hiding, secreting, providing shelter to a fugitive, assisting a fugitive to evade capture, apprehension, and detection. Now, all of the above and more are qualified and defined as harboring a fugitive. Now, I've personally tried defendants who were charged with harboring a federal fugitive. To show you the extent of that, one of the more notorious cases I tried as a defense lawyer involved a woman who had been married to her husband for about 30 years. He happened to be visiting a relative and he was witness to a bank robbery. The FBI needed him as a crucial witness to identify the culprits. There was a brand new clerk in the office, hadn't been there 2 weeks, and she, by mistake, put out a request for a warrant to be issued for him rather than a subpoena. Now, the FBI got the warrant without realizing what they were doing. The warrant was subsequently recalled, but in spite of that, the woman was put on trial for harboring a fugitive because she did not report her husband to the FBI. And during that short period of time when that erroneous warrant was outstanding, that's when all of this developed. So they were going to ask for a minimum of 10 years in a federal penitentiary against this woman. So that'll give you a perspective on the gravity of this particular underlying offense, harboring a fugitive, when we're talking about several million people with some interesting complications and potential developments that would come out of that. Now, all of the above is as it is. Now, if someone plans to and or does act in concert or in agreement with or in furtherance of a scheme with others who act for the purposes of carrying out a criminal act, which in this case harboring a fugitive, that is a conspiracy. So anyone who is involved would be chargeable with the conspiracy to harbor a federal fugitive, including those who neglect their sworn duty to enforce or carry out the law and apprehend or block the enforcement of law relative to the border crashing incidents, of which we have several million examples. These would all be chargeable. This would include the President of the United States, and that would implement Biden. And apparently Mayorkas is going to assert that he was carrying out his orders, which if given by Biden would be a misdemeanor or a felony in office. And this would also, by the way, involve anyone and everyone involved in setting up, maintaining, assisting, directing, providing aid and comfort to a sanctuary circumstance. Read sanctuary city. So everybody involved in that is giving sanctuary to people so they can evade the consequences of breaking the American laws relative to border crossings, immigration, and such like. Now, this would prove awkward to a whole lot of people, but if anybody planned this, which I suspect they did not when they brought Mayorkas in, they sure set a magnificent trap. Now, so that would be a way of getting at the underlying sanctuary cities, and there would be an interesting outcome to this, and that would be that anyone who takes office of president and appoints an attorney general for the United States of America should surely direct that attorney general, and the attorney general, when they get in, should take it on his own initiative to institute prosecutions of anyone who is involved in this sanctuary city mess. Now, there is another background back here to this whole thing. Aside from him being an obvious tactical target for the sequential process of investigating and prosecuting a possible widespread criminal conspiracy, we've got another situation. We've got this mess going on in Gaza, and we've got various and sundry international entities involved in it. Well, right now we've got some B-1B bombers hovering over that area. They orbit, they get continuously refueled in the air, and they have a big load of missiles and smart bombs on board. And when it's convenient or there's an opportunity that presents itself, they basically annihilate various and sundry insurgents. Now, those insurgents would love to be able to retaliate or shoot down the B-1B bombers, but the fact of the matter is they don't have the means. Or do they? Well, for the last 2 years, this border has been wide open, and 2.5 to 3 million people who are unaccounted for now walked across that border. You can be sure that ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Iran, and China, amongst other things, have been walking their agents, including commandos and trained saboteurs and demolition experts, across that border, and they've been carrying military-grade explosives in suitcases and other forms of baggage, and they get across the border and hop a bus and go to wherever they're going, or they get transported by the government to a sanctuary city like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, etc., Philadelphia, and they are right there in the midst of all of these great civilian targets, industrial targets, and military base targets, including a certain U.S. Air Force base not far from the southern border in Texas, where these B-1B bombers launch for their 25,000-mile round trips to the Middle East, where they are refueled in the air on the way there, refueled in the air as they orbit, and then refueled on the way back. And we have 24 of them in operation right now, just 24. And with military grade missiles, rocket propelled grenades, RPGs and stuff, they could create absolute havoc to that Air Force base, and they don't have to shoot down B-1Bs. They can destroy them on the runway. So we have an obvious liability to retaliation, preemptive strike, or whatever it may be in the minds of Iranian-backed insurgents. We don't have to look out for terrorists, so to speak, infiltrating flight schools and getting on board aircraft with box cutters or whatever weapons that did not show up in a scan going through security checkpoints at an airport. These people simply walked in. They don't have to parachute in. They don't have to take small boats and get landed from a submarine to get in. They just walk across the border. They are camouflaged by 2.5 to 3 million other illegals who've crashed the border. And we have a real live mess to set up the next 911. There is a possibility, since Iran has nukes, we might have a suitcase nuke. After all, a 500 kiloton nuclear warhead only weighs 38 pounds. And the warhead the bomb they dropped on Hiroshima was only 16 kilotons. One on Hiroshima was about 18. So now you've got one 500 kilotons explosive yield that you can walk in holding in a case. And all of these could have been planted already, ready to be detonated. And we don't even have to worry, or the people that might detonate them are on suicide missions, so they don't mind going, so they don't have to even find themselves a safe space remote from the blast site. They can do it themselves. We can have high explosives with highly radioactive waste material, which could create a disaster even if it doesn't cause a nuclear explosion. We've got biological weapons that could be introduced and dispersed if they haven't already been. We have a massive mess, and some damn fool idiot in charge of all this, the commander-in-chief and the chief executive, has issued orders to everyone to stand down so we don't do anything about securing our borders from what is now not just a threat from the ordinary things like disease, crime, mental illness, such like corruption, sexual offenders, predators, but now we have a risk of suffering retaliation from what is hot and hostile combat going on in the Middle East. So there we go. They should go after Alejandro Mayorkas.
They should go after Alejandro Mayorkas. And then, and just, I think that it would be, based on what you've shared, the next obvious person that should be gone after, if it's found that he was following orders, would be the commander-in-chief, no?
They don't have to find it. He's already said it. That under the circumstances, since he has said it himself, meaning Biden, that certainly would give probable cause, not only for an indictment, but for at least the triggering of a congressional investigation to go further. Now, this isn't a matter of, are you being nice to all of these deprived, fugitive people who are being oppressed somewhere in South America? This is a matter of national security. What the hell is wrong with somebody? And then you notice the 20-some thousand Chinese nationalists of military age.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That's the next thing I wanted everyone to look at. Literally, that's the segue that we're going to take right now. But before we take that segue there, for those of you who are just coming in, I want you to make sure that you check this out. Hey everyone, it's me, Felicia, of the Lockhart Perspective and Headlines with a Voice. I want to tell you a little secret. This is what I used to do, because I don't do it anymore. I would go to the store, buy the barbecue sauce, pour it inside of a bowl, put a whole bunch of different spices, a dash of brown sugar, a dash of maple, and a dash of mustard, stir it all around, and everybody would be like, oh my gosh, this is the best, this is the best. But I was exhausted after all of that, and a lot of times I couldn't remember how many dashes of what I put in it. But I don't have to do that anymore because now I just go to Judge Joe Brown's website and I order his 3-pack of bottled barbecue sauce. It is by far the best, and I do mean the best barbecue sauce I've ever eaten. And when you go to his website and you order his 3-pack, you'll see exactly what I mean. Head on over to jjbbbbq.com and order Judge Joe Brown's barbecue sauce. You'll be glad you did, and you're going to tell me about it. I know you will. Yes, make sure that you go. And when you go, make sure you come back and tell me. And I'm sure you're going to agree with me. I'm not joking, you guys. I like good food. I like things with spice. And that is one of, if not the absolute best barbecue sauce. My mom's gone on to glory. Not my stepmom that you guys hear about, but my mama. She had the best, but she's gone on. So without her here, this is the best. We're going to look.
Suggestion on it too. You might cut it 1/3 with malt vinegar or beer, or you're gonna add a little if you want to really kick it up. You know, when you get the green, the yellow chilies, use some of the juice, put it in, and we have recipes that'll come out. Anyway, enough.
And what Judge was just sharing with us about the Chinese is something that is very concerning to me. You hear me say all the time that I believe that we are at war from the inside out. I started saying it about 6 years ago and people laughed at me and thought that I was tripping, that I was just crazy. But now it's becoming more apparent, as it is with the story that's coming out of Montana by way of NBC. Let's take a look.
In national headlines, citizens from one of the United States' top adversaries now make up the fastest growing demographic of migrants attempting to enter the United States illegally. Here's national correspondent Kaylee Gaskins.
As the situation at the southern border deteriorates, it's not only the overwhelming amounts of illegal migrants causing concern, but where they're from.
Ma'am, where are you from?
China.
China? China.
Yes.
China.
Yes.
China.
Chinese nationals becoming the fastest growing group entering the U.S. illegally.
We need to be very concerned about this, given that China is our #1 adversary.
In fiscal year 2021, Border Patrol apprehended 450 Chinese nationals. By 2022, that figure grew to more than 2,000. And in 2023, it surpassed 24,300. In the first few months of 2024, Border Patrol has already apprehended nearly 19,000 Chinese nationals at the southern border.
Before we go on with the story, I want to interject, as we have to for copyright reasons, but here's what I want to let you understand. China is a country, this is for the viewers, China is a country that makes sure they monitor the whereabouts and the movement of their people. So it's not as if we're talking about a country that allows people to just come in and out, and we're thinking, well, what's the big deal? They want to have a better life as well. You also have to remember that anybody who works outside of the country of China must give any secrets that they've come in contact with and report back to China. Now, you all may remember a story that we covered about maybe 8 months, 9 months ago now, where they had found that individuals who were working in big tech for China were sending money and secrets and all kinds of things. These things that we're allowed to know are only the residual overflow of the stuff that we don't know. We're allowed to know it just in case somebody brings up a topic, or just in case one of the folks say, hey, this is not right. Why are these people here? Well, look, here's the story. We just canceled all of them. This gal just said 19,000. Let's listen to the rest.
One possible reason for this dramatic rise is the U.S. restricting visas as tensions between the two nations. In 2016, 2.2 million temporary visas were issued to Chinese migrants. In 2022, that dropped to just 160,000. The Chinese are also much more likely to be granted asylum in the U.S. compared with other applicants.
Given the rapid increase of Chinese nationals crossing the border and how adversarial Beijing acts towards the U.S., we have to assume that much of this is state-sponsored.
And as Republicans sound the alarm on this new phenomenon,
Clearly, it shows that the border is completely open. Joe Biden wants it open.
many Democrats chalk it up to political theater.
They're weaponizing immigration.
They want to see if they can get votes for it.
In San Francisco, a non-citizen Chinese immigrant was just sworn in to serve on the city's election commission.
That is shocking. Citizenship should matter.
But Americans increasingly see the border as a major issue, and polling shows it's a weak spot for Joe Biden's re-election. The president reportedly weighing issuing an executive order to show he's taking Americans' concerns about the border seriously. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
What say
Let
you?
me say something about that.
Yes, sir.
2 years ago, the Pentagon issued a series of white papers, and they said it's quite likely that by 2027, the U.S. and the People's Republic of China are going to have a very nasty confrontation over Taiwan. China has claimed territorial waters that extend around the western coast of Japan, all of Korea, all of Vietnam, and even up to the massive U.S. naval base in the Philippines because of some things they're doing in the South China Sea. The Pentagon says we right now don't really have the type of ammunition we need to fight more than 2 or 3 days if it came down to a non-nuclear conventional munition type shoot 'em up, even between proxies involving Taiwan. Now, you can believe that a country that is probably the second most powerful military agency in the whole world has infiltrated quite a number of its agents, saboteurs, commandos, into the United States masquerading as refugees. They are already in place. If you think Iran might sneak somebody in, Al Qaeda or ISIS sneak somebody in, you can count on the Chinese. Now, they've already sent these balloons over to do reconnaissance. Now they have reconnaissance on the ground. They can take 10 by 50 binoculars. They detail everything they can see in a military base. Might not get to Area 51, but they can certainly check out SAC bases. They can check out naval installations. They can check out shipyards. They can map out detailed Boeing aircraft in Renton, North American Rockwell, etc. They can go down to Palmdale, California, and with readily available civilian tech equipment, with a very good layout of where they're making the new B-21 bombers and get all of the details they need from up close and personal. They will have agents who will be poor set upon migrants who are victims of political repression and claiming refugee status. This is just absolutely ridiculous, absolutely absurd. And one of the things they're trying to do to explain this is, see, this Chinese lady is on the election commission. It looks like somebody is trying to get extra voters. That's not quite what they're doing. Article 1 of the Constitution says every 10 years there shall be a census conducted. And the purpose of this sentence, the primary purpose, the census, is to apportion representation in the House of Representatives. In other words, how many congressmen do you get? So I have participated in 6 census episodes as an adult where I've had to fill the stuff out. And this last one in 2020 was the first and only one where they did not ask me what my citizenship status was, nor what the status was for my parents. So Biden is supporting that. The Democrats supported that. Trump was against that, but he got overruled in the courts. So they did not ask citizenship. Now, what's that mean? California gets an extra count New York gets an extra count. Illinois gets an extra count. They get extra representation in the House, and the people that are being represented will probably be blocked from voting because they're not citizens. Now, there's an interesting aspect to this. When you're talking about the Chinese, a lot of Black Americans have some third, fourth, and fifth cousins coming in. Because if you get your DNA test done, let's say you get it through AncestryDNA.com or 23andMe, a lot of Black Americans will find that they've got a lot of recent Chinese ancestry. What happened right after the Civil War, the Southern Railroads were in shambles, and in 1866 and 67, before they started building out west, they imported a lot of Chinese coolies to work on the Southern Railroads, and they didn't bring their women, so there was all this surplus former slave nookie running around, and a lot of Black Americans have a lot of Chinese in them. A lot of people I know are shocked to find they've got 1/4 Chinese, or 3/8 Chinese, or even close to 50%. You get the exotic. Some of the sisters looking good, some of the brothers got a little look on them, that's because they got Chinese ancestry. So some of our kinfolk or recent kinfolk coming across the border. But, that's another little side. I couldn't resist throwing that in there.
Well, I'm glad you did. I do want to ask you, we're talking about the China piece, which has grown. I think the percentage was 500% over last year. I'd like for you to share with me your understanding of what happened with Cuba when they sent over all of their prisoners in correlation with what's going on now with the alleged emptying of the Venezuelan prisons. Now, a lot of migrants or illegal aliens are going into Chicago, and I think that they've been matching them personality or tenacity to tenacity by sending the Venezuelans there. Earlier on today, we covered a story prior to you coming on where they've now defunded, and I shouldn't even say defunded, they've gotten rid of all of the resource officers in Chicago's schools that were former police. I also juxtaposed the situation that happened in Massachusetts with regards to the 35-year-old men who were attending school feigning to be 15, 16, 17-year-olds. Now, putting this all together, if you're bringing in individuals, allegedly, because I want to know what you think, the Venezuelans, say, for example, this is a real deal. The Venezuelans, obviously, we know that that's the preponderance of the individuals who are into Chicago because that's based on the statistics. But what if these individuals were coming in and now we've got nobody protecting the school and there's going to be even more violence starting from the youth up? I know I've thrown a lot of paint on the wall, but tell me what you think.
I get what you're going. Some months ago, I was in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and my crew, we went over to the cupcake shop, out front of which George Floyd met his end while he was whatever. And we talked to the people there, and they said they really are upset with all of these woke folk who are there talking about defund the police. They say they've been listening to women scream as they were raped and the police won't come in. They have set up emergency stretcher crews where they have volunteers who will put people who have been injured, suffering from heart attacks, who've been shot as victims of crime, and they will hike them the 6 blocks that they have to go before they can be picked up because the emergency services won't come in there. The police won't come in there. And they've had to set up their own security because this thing about defund the police, get rid of the police, isn't what the residents want. You see, the residents want peace. Somebody talking about, oh, the police are scaring people. They shot him down when he got scared and he ran. Some of the residents are saying, shoot him down because they just burglarized my place. I've been working hard to get these things. They just raped my niece. I don't like that. They just robbed my grandmother, and I don't like that. So somebody do something about the law and order and public peace, dignity and order. But this thing where people who don't have to live there and they get all concerned about how somebody is mistreated and all of this, that's not necessarily commensurate with having a safe life, a peaceful life, being able to go next door without worrying about somebody hijacking you. So we have people who mean well that don't have good common sense, and they're little pampered poodles who have not had to deal with the realities of the streets. We have Chicago, which is hell. There is so much violence there, and the last mayor, Lori Lightfoot, pulled off one of the dumbest stunts I've ever seen, which was to distribute funds, she thought, to community groups turned out to be street gangs, Hispanic, and they were able to get massive arms supplies with this break-in of the several fully loaded boxcars in the IC rail yard that were filled with very advanced weapons ordered by National Guard units, sheriff's departments, highway patrol units around the country. And they armed up, and it's been in interstate commerce now, and Chicago is an armed camp. So she financed that. So Chicago has a huge violence problem. The schools are completely out of control. So you take out all of the school security officers. Bright move. What kind of jackass are you to vote for something like that? Because you say the children don't need someone repressing them and getting their self-esteem damaged and trying to put in a restrictive environment. Well, how are the children going to learn? What are they going to do for tomorrow? You mean to tell me that this institution of public schools, which is supposed to acclimate children to the real world, give them the essentials they need, they're supposed to be taught there are no rules. You can do whatever you want to do. No, it doesn't work too right. Now, back to what you're talking about with Cuba. And I want you to say hello to my little friend. Al Pacino. Remember that movie?
Yes, sir, I do.
That's what that was all about. He came in when Cuba got rid of its penitentiaries and its misfits, and they came to America.
Oh,
now,
wow.
by the way, that's what was going on with Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman. People thought Zimmerman was Jewish, but he wasn't. That's basically because his Hispanic grandmother probably was a waitress in one of these casinos in Havana, and one of the rich New Yorkers came down there, and she decided to take up the name of the putative father. So yeah, but we saw that there is a problem in the Miami area wherein you have Cuban OGs and Cuban gangs, not saying Zimmerman was a gang member, but you do have these things where part of the process is go find a young black guy, jack him up as an initiation thing. And by the way, if you ever go through Miami Airport, ask at least 3 official looking people for instructions or directions, because some of them from certain migration periods from Cuba take great joy in misleading the passengers. I have witnessed that firsthand on several occasions down there. So if you want somebody officially to give you directions, ask 3 people. And meanwhile, it's another thing too. You can see it in Miami. This isn't the United States of America. One time I had to go to 3 separate terminals to find somebody who spoke English who could tell me what was going on. Now, no habla español muy bien, que comprende mucho, vato man. But you know, I grew up in California, but that's a problem. What are we supposed to be becoming? Everybody in the world is learning English as the language of commerce and enterprise and air traffic control, sea control, radio communications. And we're trying to teach our kids so they can't, well, not teach them, but we don't teach them to write, print. We don't teach them math anymore. They have cell phones that are supposed to do it for them. What happens if one of these increasing power outages results in a, oh my God, my phone's run out. How am I going to tell this man what I owe him? Or, you know, you go into a Mickey D's and if the cash register lost its picture function, you know, you ever see the cash register in some Mickey D's? It's got pictures on there that they press.
Boy.
One of these, and let's see, which says 10 here and 5 here and 5 here. So they don't say 20 change, you know, in. They can't make change. They have to put that in and then press the pictures, and the cash register tells them how much they're supposed to pay the customers, which is why the service is so lousy at some fast food places. That's how bad it's gotten, where we don't need multiplication tables. And for goodness sakes, no homework, because it stresses the students out. Like, you don't have a job that's got you to do anything when you're not on the clock. And when you're on the clock, you're listening to us right now instead of doing what your boss needs. You know.
Yeah.
Bad move.
It's a really bad move. And when I looked at that, I thought to myself, this is just a part of the never-ending story that is Illinois, as well as other places in the United States. But what I said at the top of the hour, California,
New York,
New
Jersey.
Come on. Even Maine got in on it. Even Maine got in on it with giving this large area that was was prior military barracks. They converted a whole lot of stuff there, and they're giving housing. They're giving, you know, $9,000 to people in Chicago. I mean,
and wait a minute. We're in Memphis, Tennessee, largest predominantly Black city in America. All right. The idiot chief of police, who's a Black female, the idiot sheriff, who's a Black male, and the new mayor, who is a male Black, and the previous mayor, who is a male white. They're all pushing to convert Memphis to a sanctuary city. And
I was going to ask you, aren't those illegal? Why isn't that illegal?
That's what I said. It's a conspiracy to harbor or aid and abet a federal fugitive. And it's not up to somebody to say, I choose not to enforce that law. You take a solemn oath to uphold the Constitution and enforce the laws. So here you go. You're violating your law, your mandate. You broke your oath. And by the way, that gives aid and comfort to criminals who are, by the nature of how they get in here, criminals. See, you break the law. And you see, this is one of those things that becomes a matter of, it's obvious. Are you a citizen? No. You got a visa? No. How are you here? The law says you're not supposed to be here. So if you're here and you don't have a visa, you don't have whatever it takes, a permanent resident status, you're breaking the law. Did you go through customs? Did you go through security? Did you go through immigration? No, you broke the law. So you're breaking the law. So who helped you? That's aiding and abetting a federal fugitive.
So, it looks as if right now there are a lot of people, as I've been looking over some clips and things of that nature, there are some folks that have actually hit the ground running, which is one of my major desires. I don't want to just necessarily sit inside and do this. I want to get out and go and see things for myself, because I know that when you put your eyeballs on something, it just solidifies what your innate gifts are, right? I want to go to Chicago.
Well, I tell you where you can go.
Hmm.
Go on YouTube and watch Miss Fannie Willis.
That's you know what?
But
Are you connected?
Wait, before we get
That's the next person we're talking about.
Before we get into what happened legally, when you see Fannie Willis, you are getting a view of what Lori Lightfoot was, what Kamala Harris was, what Stacey Abrams is, what that mayor you're talking about is, what this black judge that just got, she had to start serving a sentence she got in 2014 that was held up on appeal. You're getting a load of what the Democratic Party is trying to impose on black people and the country.
Yes.
See, Fannie Willis is so typical. Now, aside from the legalities, I remember, somebody just called me up yesterday, said, Joe, look, I'm wrong. I said, well, what, I was thinking, 92-page indictment and all of this, there must be something to this. And, Trump has to be evil because all of these. And then I saw, Fannie Willis. And I said, wait a minute. This isn't any dignified somebody. This is some kind of narcissistic idiot. It's like, that's not what I was thinking. I'm thinking, like I've been looking at CSI and, the defense of the people of the sex crimes things. And you get the learned chief district attorney. He is pointing out pitfalls to his subordinates, and you get an idiot. Is that what's going on? So yeah, it is. Not all women, because I know some very fine female judges, white and black, same with the lawyers. And then I know a number that over the last 50 years I've been doing this, I used to whip all the time. They're like Fannie. They're so stuck on stupid in their own little narcissistic requirements that they, for example, don't try cases. When they get a prominent defense lawyer, they try to try him or beat him, and they forget about the case. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, all through this trial, the prosecution had the obligation of proving the case beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty. That's their burden. But this prosecutor over here has been trying to beat me rather than worry about her case. Now, we focused on the defense with the case. You did not hear proof beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty. You saw and observed, and you heard the prosecution try to show you how tough she was. But that's not what we're here for.
Wow.
And by the way, let me say this about this. All of this debate in the news media about was she telling the truth about having the relationship develop as this sort of an office romance later, or as implied it occurred up front before he got brought in the special prosecutor. Guess what? It does not make one bit of difference, because the issue here is that Fannie Mae Willis, or Fannie Willis, and Wade are officers of the court. And when a romance developed, if it was an office romance, they both had an independent obligation as an officer of the court to bring that to the court's attention. Assuming you believe her contention that it developed later after he became the special prosecutor, they did not. So they're out of there, or should be. If it occurred before that and they didn't advise the court, That's also the case. Other thing you need to be aware of is Miss Fannie was not on trial. Miss Fannie was simply a witness. The issue is an administrative motion as to whether the district attorney's office for Fulton County should be removed from this case, and whether the special prosecutor, Attorney Wade, should be removed from this case. So she jumped in here in the most preposterous fashion. She walked in that frumpy red pink dress with no undergarments on that
Correct.
she just had. And she walked in hand on hip with that snake charming neck bit and threw a big sheaf of papers rudely on council table. And you know what was going on at that time?
What?
Counsel for the district attorney's office was having a good argument with the judge that she should not be required to testify.
Wow.
So she brought a dumb behind in there and pulled off one of the dumbest stunts I've seen in 50 years. She got on the witness stand, and this is the district attorney for a major American city, Atlanta, in the preposterous position of having put herself in a situation where she needed to take the Fifth Amendment. And it was ridiculous. The more she talked and she kept adding stuff, the worse it got. So now we've got specters of money laundering. We've got specters of IRS fraud. She talked about her 501k she put into her campaign. That, by the way, became taxable income, which was not apparently reported to the IRS after it came out. She had an existing tax lien on her property or home, and that always requires attestation subject to federal penalties of perjury that your finances are they are. And she talked about she had $15,000 in cash hidden in the home that could have paid off the lien instead of it being set for installments. There are state reporting requirements. You have a situation where what she got back from her campaign fund under the circumstances became earned income because the 30-some thousand she put in was not properly documented. All of those cash transactions and the amounts you're listening to should have been documented and reported to IRS, and you can believe that IRS had its agents listening in on that, and there's likely to be criminal prosecution that will follow from it. Now, I was a witness for Wesley Snipes, and I testified at his trial, and by the way, I'll tell you this, the jury did not find him guilty of tax fraud or tax evasion. They found that he actually overpaid his taxes because they were directly deducted. IRS had a check for him for more than $250,000 during sentencing for his overpayment of taxes. They got him convicted of failure to file a complete set of returns, and he got 3 years in a federal penitentiary for that. Now, what did you hear Miss Fannie Mae do? It was failure to file any returns, failure to report, failure to pay taxes on that. She's in trouble. That's how they took down Al Capone, was by taxes. Now, next thing, you get the specter of Atlanta's got a lot of corruption. This is a chief prosecutor. Where did this cash come from? Remember, she's talking about she's broke. She was unable to afford anything because she ran for judge, I think it was, in 2016 unsuccessfully. And she had all these financial hardships. Where did the money come from? Plus, here's the other thing, too. We know what she received as district attorney. It wasn't half what, it wasn't a third of, it wasn't a fourth of what her boyfriend got. And see, here's the thing. The boyfriend comes in, whether he is after the fact or before the fact boyfriend, He comes in because she shot her mouth off about she was going to go get Trump, whatever. And she was saying that before he even got involved in the November 2020 election. This was while he was the president. So to preserve the appearance of impartiality, you get a special prosecutor. Now, why do you have to have impartiality? The DA is trying to always get somebody. See, sometimes it develops where the DA is supposed to stand up, or the DA's assistant stands up and says, Your Honor, in the interest of justice, the state moves to dismiss these charges. Why? Because the DA is supposed to represent all the people and to ensure justice and equity. And sometimes that requires being independent, so you don't have a stake in the outcome of the proceedings. That's why we bring in Mr. Wade. Now, he's paid between $650 and $690 some thousand so far for expenses. And guess what? He's never tried a criminal case. He doesn't do that. So the three experienced criminal trial lawyers have submitted bills of about 150, maybe 200,000. He's already been paid going on 700,000.
Wow.
And this is not his business. And guess what? Even though she was supposed to defer to the special prosecutor in terms of the actual dynamics of prosecuting the case, she still is the person that signs off on his claim, any claim that comes up. So they've been vacationing on what? Her money? No. His money? Well, I'm paying him back because I wanted to show him. Well, if he paid his money out, fine, but where did you get yours? Because we know what your salary was. It ain't even $200,000 a year.
And I know she represented a lot of them dope boys back in the day, but I'm gonna leave that
where'd
there.
You get your money? And
Where your money come from?
Where did the money come from? And then the other thing too is there is this thing in law called the appearance of an impropriety. In other words, even if you didn't do anything wrong, if it smells and looks wrong, is wrong. So see, these two are officers of the court. So they have embroiled themselves in a mess that gives the appearance of something wrong. Which one is it? You have, and see, she's not a defendant right now. She's a witness. So one of the other witnesses on an equal level for the interest of the people of Cobb County, or not Cobb, Fulton County, is what's the girlfriend who said, yeah, we were talking about this back in 2019. No question about it. I'm very sure we just discussed it, girl talk all the time about this guy. And then we find out, whoa, he wasn't coming by my house. Even Dad, and I know Papa John Floyd, we went to school together. I've known him since he was 19 years old.
Wow.
He's straight up and down guy. I believe him. He said, I never saw Wade. I didn't meet him until last year. But that's even worse because who does he see? The DJ boyfriend who had, as he said, some kind of government job. I'm not sure what, but he was over there almost every day. So does that exculpate Wade and her from having a relationship? No. They were meeting up in the hotel room because she got a live-in boyfriend and he's trying to hide from his wife, who, by the way, looked a lot better.
Yes, she did. Well, Judge, we have something that came out a little earlier, and we're going to do these three here. I want you to look at this.
On the whistleblower.
Well, no, this one came out today, earlier this morning. Now, what ended up happening, Judge, this was updated about an hour ago. It states that, and this comes from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution out of Atlanta, Georgia. Nathan Wade appeared to make at least 35 visits to Hateville neighborhood where Fani Willis was living before the district attorney hired him to lead Fulton County's election interference prosecution, according to cell phone data included in a court submission filed on Friday. The filing by attorneys for Donald Trump raises fresh questions about the relationship between the two prosecutors, which the former president and other defendants argue has tainted the case against them and should result in Willis and her office being disqualified. Trump's lawyers relied on data collected from Wade's cell phone and cell phone tower transmissions to track movements. It seems it contradicts Wade's testimony last week, in which he said that he had visited Willis at her condo in Hapeville no more than 10 times before he was hired in November of 2021. It also indicates Wade's twice at 2 different times he arrived at late night at the condo and left nearly early the next morning. In months before, Willis and Wade said their relationship became romantic in early 2022. Both Wade and Willis testified last week that they did not spend the night together at the Hapeville condo. We are required to respond to the filing via the court, and we are preparing a response now. This comes from Jeff DeSantis, a spokesman for Willis. He said this on Friday, which is today. The timeline is important for 2 reasons. If Willis and Wade were a couple before she hired him, it raises the prospect that she may have violated at least the spirit of anti-nepotism rules. Now, that through Fulton County is a policy that specifically focuses on family members. But more importantly, both
That's
Wade,
actually relevant to the case as it stands here in terms of the interest of the parties of immediate concern, meaning the defendants and the prosecution. But go ahead.
Okay, so it goes on to say that more importantly, both Willis and Wade have testified under oath that the relationship began in 2022. Now, if the defense attorneys can prove that they lied under oath, it could constitute perjury.
That's a separate and independent matter that has nothing to do with the charges against Trump and what, 16, 17?
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Absolutely. So Friday's court filing includes an affidavit from Charles Middlestad, a longtime investigator for the defense attorneys. And he said that he obtained cell phone data from AT&T through a subpoena. Middlestad said that he used the online tool called CellHawk to determine where Wade spent his time in 2021. CellHawk is considered by law enforcement to be a gold standard in cell phone records analytics. Middlestad said, noting that it's used by law enforcement throughout the United States and Georgia. The affidavit says Willis and Wade called each other more than 2,000 times during the first 11 months of 2021, and they exchanged just less than 12,000 text messages. Middlestad also said that he focused on when Wade's cell phone connected to towers near Willis's Hapeville address for extended periods of time, just to make sure that he was stationary and not transient, not moving around.
That goes to perjury and some other things. That also goes to another thing too. There's another conflict here that may expose Wade and her to criminal liability to the state of Georgia. And that anti-nepotism thing only deals with Georgia. It has nothing to do with Trump at all, meaning et al. Is the other series of defendants. But it does have to do with dumb crook stuff. Why did you get on the stand, open your mouth, and expose yourself to this liability? Remember? You have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and may be used in evidence against you. You have a right to consult with, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is the district attorney. This person who's charged with being the chief law enforcement officer for Atlanta, Georgia, Fulton County, does not know this? Oh, wow, she's a rookie. She's in this office for political purposes because she has no knowledge of criminal law. She's never practiced it. So it shows that is a dumb crook thing. Like, shut your mouth. What the hell is the matter with you? See, this is another liability. Other thing, you heard all of that cross-examination in her about did you ever fly at any time to what she put the DMV area. You know, she got cute. She couldn't.
Yes, she did.
She said, you know, DC, Virginia, Maryland, you know, what's going on here? Why you want to throw that? Were you ever in DC at the same time? Now, remember, their filings in this divorce proceedings that are part of a court of record of the state of Georgia.
Correct.
That might contradict that. As a matter of fact, some of them were posted last month on Twitter, X now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting the contradiction that's revealed with that. Now, back to this thing with the tax lien on the property, the home.
Okay.
It's subject, the representations are subject to federal penalties of perjury. Now, one of the things that you have to worry about that is this, when you deal with the feds, that's a whole different order of business. See, you can tell the state police and everything, I don't know what you're talking about. Man, you crazy. I don't know nothing about that. But you see, if you get in and the FBI called you in, IRS, they say, we're here because we have information that you were with certain other people when this bank was robbed and that you aided them in their escape. You did not go into the bank, but you helped furnish the automobile. All right, they just told you what you're there for. And then you add 3 minutes later, look, I don't know nothing about this, man. Well, they just told you what it was about, so you know something about it. So what happens is you go and you have a trial. I'm representing you maybe, or somebody else is representing you. And they've got 19 counts on this indictment, and you get found guilty on 18 of them because smart legal counsel kept them from being able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you committed the crime. But the jury knows that they followed the law. It's technical, but they don't like you because they sense that you did do something wrong. And when they get it, where they hear the recording of them, the FBI advising you on what you're there for, and they hear you say, I don't know nothing about it, they say, oh, we ain't had on that. So he's found guilty of making a knowingly false statement to a federal agency or agent. So he gets 5 years, which will mean he'll serve 56 before he can be released with all good and honor time from federal custody and control. They don't have federal parole anymore.
What?
No, they don't. That's Biden, by the way. That was Biden and Eastland and Byrd back, I think they did that in 1979, 80. And I was practicing defense law then, and that went into effect. They abolished the federal parole system. I had a client who was director of federal parole for the Western District of Tennessee. Her office was obsoleted after 1981, thanks to the current president. And Eastland and Byrd and some others. They were being tough on crime.
Idiots. Anyway, I want you to help me understand this, because this guy, and by this guy, wow, I'm going to table that in the back of my mind, because wow. So I want you to explain this for me so that I really get it, because it appears that Wade constantly goes back, double back, mess with paperwork. And I would love eventually to talk about.
Let me tell you what he's doing.
Yes, please do.
See, perjury is interesting.
Okay.
But perjury is not just lying.
Okay.
For example, you've got a crucial eyewitness to an armed robbery at a liquor store. The witness was dropping his side old lady off at her apartment, but he can't say that because his wife will be very angry.
Yes.
But he'll lie and say, I was just out getting a pack of cigarettes. But he will give a truthful recitation. This guy had on a red jacket, and a green hat, blah, 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 blah. And He's being truthful about things that impact the outcome of the proceeding. The lie has no impact on the outcome of the proceedings. So perjury has to have some impact on the outcome of the proceedings, and it is not corrected before the proceedings are completed. So what Wade might be doing is, as an astute lawyer, even though he has no criminal experience, he's beginning to research the law on perjury. And before these proceedings are over, he's correcting the misstatements or the outright lies, because a lot of states have a provision wherein it's not perjury if the person corrects the lie before the proceedings are completed.
Okay.
And you also notice that what Wade is doing is a lot of what you see in an organized crime trial. I do not recall. I do not have a recollection of these matters. Now, somebody can tell you while you're there, which is, I don't know nothing about it. But if you say, I don't recall, means you just forgot. Hell, everybody forgets. What's my phone number? I don't know. I forgot. See, people forget. Now, he's being slick and doing that, but she didn't have the sense to do it. And see, she also keeps trying to throw him under the bus. You know, he said all that I could do for him was make a sandwich.
Make him a sandwich.
She's trying to explain why she was paying for him. But if you go to a beauty salon, the sisters are saying she was buying her, she was a trick paying her gigolo.
And you know what? I have to agree with that. And let me tell you what I see. This is the way that I saw it. The way that I see it is, and I've said this publicly here on the channels, I see it as they were dealing with each other long before this whole Trump thing came up. I believe that what was the pressure that the other woman gives the man is, when you going to leave your wife? You guys, I thought you said that it was, y'all not dealing with each other no more. When you going to leave your wife? Oh, if I leave her, I'm not going to have enough money to take care of this and that. And I don't make this and I don't make that. And then the opportunity came where she was actually able to call his bluff, which is the reason why I say, not what is real or not, my assessment. That's the reason why the divorce documents went in the day after he signed that second contract, because like I shared with folks here, there was another contract that they were working under already with Fulton County. His law firm and his buddies that was on the firm with him, they all already had a contract that was a separate contract, obviously, because it predated the whole Trump issue. That predated that. And so they had a contract, but the day after he signed it, it appears that he went ahead and did the divorce. This particular young man does not seem to be as smart as he thinks he is. He really isn't. And I looked at her and I said, how is it that these individuals have become attorneys? And it makes me beat myself up every day for not finishing and going on to law school. It really does.
Let me answer.
It really does.
They're about making money. They're not about criminal law. See, lawyers that get into criminal law, let me say this. The best criminal lawyers that appeared in front of me, I got elected to 2 8-year terms as a criminal court judge. I practiced criminal law. That's basically what I did. I was a trial lawyer. The best criminal lawyers are not in it for the money. They're in it because they're on a crusade, because criminal law is the face-to-face interaction between the government and ordinary citizens. The whole Bill of Rights is there to ensure that the federal government does not use its awesome power to politically, socially, or economically oppress any given individual. The 14th Amendment applies due process, which is what that is, to the states. So, in other words, criminal lawyers that are real criminal lawyers aren't really doing it for the money. And the best ones don't charge the biggest fees. One of the problems with the whole practice of law today is we have too many lawyers. They used to complain about not enough. So now, in order to keep their doors open, if they do have clients, and in light of the fact that you have credit cards and all kinds of other ways of paying for stuff, what winds up happening is the lawyers are charging what I call exorbitant fees for routine matters. And that's because their clients list is so short, they have to charge big fees to keep the doors open. So you get this, and I looked at two people who do not understand criminal law. And then law too, one way of explaining this when you are a lawyer is law school teaches you how to mix paints, how to use brushes and certain kind of effects and strokes, but that has absolutely nothing to do with your artistry in coming up with a work of art. In other words, you could know as much as Michelangelo did when it, Leonardo da Vinci or Rembrandt or whatever, when it comes to how to mix paints and use a paintbrush, but no way does that say you know how to deal with their art. So a lot of these people are inartful. A lot of people went to law school, and it's kind of a travesty. What they studied in law school was not con law as it applied to people. It had to do with conflict of interest with trucking firms making money. And I remember this. I took the Tennessee bar more than 50 years ago. And the thing that was interesting about it is the part of the bar that it was mandatory that you pass.
Yes.
In 50 years, I've never had a case that deals with it. Criminal law, torts, all of that. You didn't have to pass that part of the bar. They gave it to you. It was an option thing, so to speak. So what is that? So that's what you're getting here. It's all about the money and not about the principle. They're not being missionaries trying to ensure that the American system of justice, equity, equality, fairness, and fundamental operation of the law, where the law controls things, not an individual, that has passed. And they front it off. And I am astonished at the ignorance of mainstream media. I am really astonished.
I am as well.
But and they have no experienced lawyers. The court system is filled with that. There's one person on a federal district court of appeals whose career consisted of this. Her husband went to law school. She put him through law school. She had children. She went to law school. She graduated. She passed the bar. 4 days after she was sworn in, she was made a circuit court judge, which tries anything up to murder cases, unlimited civil cases. That's 4 days after she became a member of the bar. Literally, her first time in a courtroom was when she was sworn in as a judge of that court. Within 18 months of graduating from law school, the same individual was made a federal district court judge. And now it's on a court of appeals as a federal justice. And that person's never been in a courtroom as a lawyer, never filed an appeal, never settled a case, never had a motion, never interviewed a witness. And that's what you have running the law. And it is replete going up through the entire system. Now, that is bad enough. The other one is advertising. Now, I confess I used to do advertising. I don't, because you got a lot of feminists in some of these law firms after I'd been doing it for 5 years. They didn't like what I said, so I don't do that anymore. But you have people who have these slick advertising campaigns that basically I said, I want to see more than that. I want to see a track record. But you have these slick advertising campaigns. They've got a lot of clients and they don't know what the hell they're doing because they've never been in a court. And when you, try the case. And what is that about? Imagine you get a referral to a doctor. You got a problem. You're ill. You're hurting. And you see the medical license on the wall. Now, you presume this doctor has been through the hot and heavy thing of being an intern and a resident. And he's got hundreds or thousands of patients he's seen in intense circumstances, and he has learned his trade. What would you think if this person has never had a patient as an intern or as a resident, and it's all out of books? You wouldn't feel too confident, would you?
Not at all. I would absolutely run.
Well, see, that's the problem with today's lawyers. They have
Mhm.
no experience.
Well,
Mr. Wade doesn't have criminal law experience. Miss Fanny's daddy, John Floyd, not the one that's also named John Floyd that's on the prosecution team, he said, I've had at least 1,000 cases, trials. I've had several thousand trials.
Mhm.
And see, I'm looking at somebody that is a DA with 3 or 4 or 5 appearances in criminal court. What do you know? You're a rookie.
That's right.
You have somebody in charge of lead counsel for prosecuting probably the most infamous, most publicized criminal case in the country, where all of the spotlights are on you, and you're a rookie.
Mm.
And by the way, there are a number of attorneys that are being touted as civil rights lawyer, this, that, and the other, an expert, and they settle cases, but they've never been to trial. So
Never been to trial. And that makes all the difference in the world, whether or not the person has gone to trial, because it's easy to make what I call, like negotiations or whatever. You can go in mediation and you can make negotiations, but for you to actually be able to go to trial, it's the artist that you spoke of. It's that you cannot learn, something that's
well, let me not
innate.
interrupt you, but it's even more important than that. I'll give you an example. There is a friend of mine, hell of a trial lawyer, but I trained him. He's dead now, died congestive heart failure a few years ago. He was just practicing and he came running down to me. This is in the 80s. I was practicing too. And he said, Joe, what am I going to do, man? They offered my client 10 years. He says he didn't do it. He's not going to take that offer. He said for trial today. I couldn't work anything out. I said, well, go up and tell him this. So he ran up, came back down about an hour, half hour later. Look, they said they reduce it down to 8 years, but he's not going to take that. I said, okay, tell you what, I'll be up there. So when I went up there, the judge said, well, Mr. Brown, do you need to reset if you're going to assist Mr. So-and-so in this case? I said, no, sir, not necessary. We'll be ready for trial, whatever the court's disposition is. I am advised that the court is thinking about 1:30 this afternoon. We will be ready. And if the court would be so kind as to bring over some prospective, see Mr. So-and-so, give him a call, we'll be ready to go. So they dropped the offer down to 5 years right there. Well, after lunch, when we showed up, they dropped it down to 2. I said, let's go, rock them up, seat them up. And you know what it did? Your Honor, in the interest of justice, the state recommends that these charges be dismissed. Hold on, Your Honor, one moment. We'd like the opportunity for the defendant to pay the cost. So the lawyer said, why do you want to pay the cost? I said, because in Tennessee, that means jeopardy attaches. Somebody can't come back later. So I was on one of these short lists they had up in the prosecutor's office. If any of these attorneys has a trial, consult with your division chief or see deputy director so-and-so, you will need assistance. And what happens with civil cases or criminal cases, if you kick behind in a trial, they're going to understand it's going to cost you on the offer. Civilly, if you haven't tried anything, they give you low ball offers. Now, there's a guy, for example, named Willie Gary. They're making a movie with him in it. I know Willie Gary. I've got his phone number in my phone, and I've had it for a long time. He, me, and Johnny Cochran, we knew each other. We'd get to conferences and hang out and drink. Okay. Willie Gary is a black man. He's my age, 76 years old. He's down in Boca Raton, Florida. He's semi-retired, but he has an interesting distinction. He holds the record for the largest jury verdict in American history that stood up on appeal. It was $980 million 40 years ago.
Wow.
He holds the record for 4 out of the top 10 jury verdicts in American history and 5 or 6 of the top 10 settlements in American history. Now, would you want him or somebody who has never tried a case to settle one for you?
I'll take Gary for 1,000.
Yeah, and who do you think is going to walk in? Look, I'm not playing with this. You better come up with something else. This is not enough. Or you get somebody, the city concedes liability on some police misconduct, and they've got an insurance policy for $250 million, and somebody settles it for approximately $20 million. That's not doing well. You should have had much more, especially if it's a notorious case. See, so you kind of get your reputation. Somebody just got off the trail talking about, I'm going to meet you outside the saloon degree. Who the hell are you? Well, it's Wide Earp, then somebody's, oh, hell. You know, Wild Bill Kickout, oh, hell. You know,
I love it.
Bill, oh, hell. You know, Matt Dillon, you know, Matt Masterson, oh, hell. You know, that makes a difference between who the devil are you, you know.
Well, Judge, I want you to take a look at this right here, because this is what Nathan Wade did. He tried to block the former attorney's testimony.
Just into our newsroom, a new twist in the ongoing court battle over whether Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis and Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade will be disqualified from their case against former President Donald Trump and several others accused of interfering with Georgia's 2020 election.
So today, Nathan Wade, he actually submitted a new court filing asking the judge to counsel what could be a pivotal private court proceeding. Investigative reporter Zach Merchant has been following this case from the very beginning. So Zach, what does all of this mean?
Well, guys, it's important to not get lost in the legal jargon. At its core, this filing gets to an essential part of the defense team's argument as that team seeks answers from a witness they consider key to their efforts to remove both DA Fani Willis and Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade from the case. That witness, Terrence Bradley, Wade's former law partner and one-time divorce lawyer. At last week's hearing, defense attorneys spent hours trying to get Bradley to answer when Willis and Wade began their romantic relationship. The defense attorneys are alleging it started before Willis named Wade as a special prosecutor in the case, and that role for him allowed both of them to financially benefit from the case. But Bradley testified he couldn't say anything because, in his view, any information he may have was protected by attorney-client privilege. Fulton County Judge Scott McAfee looked ready to accept that argument until just before the end of Friday's hearing, when Bradley gave an answer that seemed to reopen the issue.
Now I'm left wondering if Mr. Bradley has been properly interpreting privilege this entire time.
The judge asked Bradley and his attorney to join him for a private, off-the-record proceeding to determine whether Bradley really was covered by attorney-client privilege last Friday, but apparently that did not happen. And now, in today's court filing, Wade is asking Judge McAfee to cancel it altogether and uphold the attorney-client privilege shield. Here's why this matters. The stakes are substantial. If the judge does have that meeting and decides Bradley was not claiming privilege properly, defense attorneys could get another chance to question him under oath about the origins of Willis and Wade's relationship.
Now let's take a look at what was out this morning.
An explosive court filing in Atlanta today, now raising new questions about Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis and the relationship.
The first clip we saw, folks, was from 18 hours ago. Today. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Quick comment. You see, the more you get into this, the more liability gets put out there for Wade and Willis getting criminally prosecuted.
Yes.
For independent things, and the perjury case is getting to be extraordinary here. Also, some other things too, like, was this $690-some thousand, $650,000 really earned, or was it a scam the two of them were pulling off to defraud the state of Georgia?
Yes.
That's a major theft felony. Now,
oh yes,
they could have avoided all of this by simply coming up and saying, you know, this is extra work for the office I have. We have a major crime wave going on in Atlanta. We need all of these prosecutors focused on the needs of the citizens of Atlanta. This thing involving Donald Trump et al. Is a national matter. We probably made a mistake getting into it. We'll bail on it and we'll concede, and none of this would have come out. Now, these fools may wind up, probably they'll get put on probation, but they might go to jail like this black judge did, where she did something for her brother that got her convicted at a trial before a jury and sentenced in 2014. And the matter just came back after going up and down in the state and with the federal system until it's back for sentencing. And she had the embarrassing spectacle of a black female deputy sheriff dragging her out of the courtroom while she's got her collapsed with her heels dragging. See, that's what it might come into. And that's why I said it is a dumb crook thing. Bail on it. You
That's right.
Maintain your political future that way. But now you got a bunch of idiots talking about they dumping on her because she a sister girl and they discriminating against because she's black. Ain't got nothing to do with it. I'm a black judge. I would look, this judge is nice. Right now, I would be saying also, based on what we've heard here, both of you, when these proceedings are over, prepare yourselves to show cause as to why you should not be found in contempt of this court. See, as I'm saying right now, for purposes of removing them, enough is in this record to boot them because they are not doing what they ought to have done as officers of the court. See, this is like having an employee and you run a boutique, a restaurant, or a store, and this employee of you is clowning around with the customers. That reflects on you. So we have in law, not just doing wrong and impropriety, we have the necessity, the absolute necessity to avoid the appearance of impropriety. See, Shakespeare said 500 years ago, you want to solve the problems, kill all the lawyers. And people still think like that. So lawyers, as experts in how the system works, can do things ordinary layman cannot do, even though every layman thinks he can do as much with the law as every other lawyer, but they can't. And bottom line is we have to maintain a certain degree of public trust in the institution of law and the courts. So we have to avoid the appearance of impropriety. And this stinks to high heavens. There is no way that what we've had here with the polarized nature of this mess, for somebody, a significant portion of the population, to lose interest in even thinking about this being an upfront institution. You have people talking about the judge is favoring Fannie. Why is he doing that? And then some he's dumping on. He's doing it straight up and down the middle. This is a magnificent performance by this judge. Not like that idiot in New York whose name I don't even want to mention. So, but you know, I'll back off. I interrupt.
I love it when you get going.
Gentlemen, would you like to approach you're on a sidebar?
Okay, here we have what we were just sharing. The cell phone data contradicts Fani Willis's testimony. And remember, the last clip, folks, that we saw a few moments ago was from 18 hours ago. And this is from this morning.
That she had with the special prosecutor that she hired to oversee the election interference case against former President Donald Trump. Cell phone data obtained by Trump's legal team shows Nathan Wade, that special prosecutor, visited Willis's neighborhood at least 35 times in the 11 months before Willis hired him in late 2021. Twice, Wade arrived late at night and left early the following morning. The data shows about 2,000 calls and 12,000 text messages between Wade and Willis from January to November 2021. Why this matters, the timeline is everything in this case. Joining me now on the phone is former Assistant District Attorney of Fulton County, Daryl Cohen. Daryl, thanks for joining us. We sat and watched as this hearing originally started. What do you make of these new revelations?
This is damning. At the very best, it's troubling. It seems to completely contradict the testimony of both Fani Willis and of Nathan Wade. And because of that, this could be a complete game changer in terms of how Judge McAfee decides to rule.
The timeline here, the timeline is extremely important. Get viewers up to speed about why this timeline matters.
Well, it matters because the testimony has been that Fani Willis and Nathan Wade became friends. They met at a conference, and he was hired before any of this took place, and that they did not have any type of relationship other than completely a business relationship. Now, if these texts and if these pings on the telephone are accurate, that changes the entire ball game and means that there could be some untruth that's been told under oath. In other words, it could be perjury, and I hope it isn't.
My reaction to that, it doesn't make a damn bit of difference for these immediate proceedings, but it makes a hell of a lot of difference for the future liability of both of them, the criminal and civil prosecution or suit. That's where it is important. So that's what we're looking at. You open your big mouth and you put yourself into, you have a right to remain silent. Anything you say, can and may be used in evidence against you. And anything you say is becoming drastically expanded.
So let me ask you, Judge, does this then nullify his whole request to have that? It adds another layer, certainly, but he wanted to just reverse everything with this, with this business partner, is what I'm trying to say. So
well,
does
in
that
other
sort of
words,
kick that
business
out?
partner is also his partner, law partner. There are confidences that come up. Okay, the divorce proceedings confidences, yes. And that is a well-taken point, attorney-client privilege. But some of these things are administrative that have absolutely nothing to do with confidences. It has to do with things like facts. You see, if you're talking about a fact, in other words, well, let me digress. If you give fingerprints and your prints match what they seize from the scene, of course, you're incriminating yourself. So does the Fifth Amendment apply to giving fingerprints where the giving of the prints incriminates yourself? No, because that's physical. That deals with an objective fact. The protection against self-incrimination has to do with this and so forth, and providing access to stuff. Where it is a material fact that is objective. Did this get discussed or not? Not necessarily the truth or the falsity of what was said, not necessarily any consequence, but did this happen? Did this issue come up? And you see, that's where you might get around it, but actually it doesn't really make much difference. It's peripheral. And it would not even be in the case were it not for the fact that Fani and company brought it up and put themselves in a position where it would come out and then become relative to something entirely different. You know
Well,
what
they just should have shut up.
Yeah, but big dumb crook, shut your mouth.
Yeah.
But you see, here's the other thing too. You know what it is very relevant and material to right now?
What?
Credibility. See, in other words, and for an unobvious reason, none of these people, including the former assistant, have picked up on it. These two are officers of that judge, of the court he runs. So if it's a matter of credibility, what does the court look like if its representatives and officers cannot be trusted and are in fact unreliable and in fact make misstatements? See, one of the things nobody has done and that I would do, I'd stop. You, Wade or Willis, as an officer of the court, I want your report, which means we take it out the realm of the Fifth Amendment and we get it into, do you want to keep your law license?
Okay.
You will answer, or I will lock you up for contempt. If you take the Fifth Amendment, you don't have to, but your law license is going to go poof. Your situation with this court is going to go. You can exercise the Fifth if you want, but you say you take the consequences, which are something else. You're acting as an officer of this court, and it is obvious that anybody listening to this is going to be wondering about whether you're telling the truth or not.
Absolutely.
It should be no such. It should be that if you say it as an officer of the court, I can take it as a fact. In other words, if you as an officer of the court tell me this, it's like I saw it. I eyeballed it. In other words, I saw the witness was testifying in front of me. If you as an officer of the court report it, if you say you did this, you report it. If you want to take this file jacket 300 miles away, you can, because you're an officer of the court, just like the clerk. See, that's what's going on. So at this point, the judge has enough to crucify somebody, but the problem is right now, you get into this, a bigger picture. If this thing stays with this office and a jury is trying Trump, you see, in the back of their minds, everybody in America has heard this. These people that are prospective jurors are not up for in a pool where they may be told, do not watch the proceedings. It's like Daddy Floyd testified when somebody tried to jump him. Did you discuss this with somebody else? Yeah, I did. Well, how can it? Well, look, nobody read me the rule. It's called a rule where you get ordered not to discuss the testimony with any other witness. And he said, I'm not under subpoena. I'm not now.
He said that. I heard him when he said that.
That was sophisticated, and most of the public didn't pick up on what
I
that
picked
meant.
up on it.
That's like, you're not subject to the rule because
There you
you
go.
aren't a witness. But you see, all of these people in the public that have heard this, how is the state of Georgia going to get a fair trial when all these people have heard this?
They're not.
Is when she says there is an objective and honest basis for this prosecution. Can you believe her? Or are you saying, no, this person's been lying through their teeth, or maybe not, or at least putting themselves in some really hyped up, embarrassing situations, so the state of Georgia can't get a fair trial from her side as long as this office is involved. Now, the big thing, if you get a new office, they're going to have to put it over after the election in November. They might decide that in the interest of justice to dismiss it. Remember, the special prosecutor for the Justice Department, says relative to Biden and the black box full of documents behind the vet, he said, we find enough probable cause to indict, but because we don't think a jury will convict him, and he's old and decrepit, which it's embarrassing, but he said, we're exercising our discretion, prosecutorial discretion, and we're not going to go forward with a recommendation of prosecution. Now, why would it, you see, have you read the 92-page indictment?
No, I haven't gone through it with a
There's
no.
some interesting things in there. Like, part of the alleged criminality is recommending to followers that they read or watch Newsmax. I read some Newsmax article almost every day. I think it's probably outside of the hype with diet and environment and everything else. The articles they come up with most closely match what I heard when I was at an event or saw it, or I'm a witness to it.
Agreed.
And my analysis of it, because I hear all of this stuff that assumes Trump is a devil, Baba Yaga, Russian boogeyman, and he's inherently evil, but I don't hear anything except he's evil, therefore you can't. He's evil, therefore we should. Well, what do you base this on? He's a racist. Well, the worst racist I've heard in a long time was Joe Biden, and I was there, and I
I'm
heard
with you on that one.
starting 52 years ago when I heard him make a speech where Byrd was present, Stennis was present, Eastland was present, Faubus was present. I think Wallace had been put in a wheel. No, he hadn't been. So Wallace was there. And I heard one of the most racist speeches I've ever heard. 5 years later, he got in trouble when he said it in the newspaper, reported it. But I heard it, saw it. Saw some idiot with a ducktail looking like he was in the 1957 motorcycle gang. But, you know, this was in 1972, and he was saying Negroes, and everybody was saying black or Afro-American. But, you know, he knew his Negroes. He said that during that speech. He had been campaigning. I know the Negro. You need to have me in to handle this Negro problem because we've got H. Rap Brown, Stokely Carmichael. We've got all of these Negroes riding and doing all of this and committing crime and acting like animals and turning the streets into jungles. And I'm going to put them in zoos where they're safe. You know, all of this, that, and the other. And it isn't just a crime bill in 1994. You got to talk about 1979, 1981, 83, 87, 91, and 94. And the damage that they did to the typical minority defendant is just absolutely exceptional. And in this crap, he's going around, one rock will get you 5 years. One rock will get you 5 years. And then he got a crackhead son who loves those rocks. And by the way, I did actually get to read and look at what was on the 3 laptops. Not one, it's 3 of them.
Wow.
This was November 2022. We had the technician in it. And we were doing a moot court thing for Fox, which you can still get, on whether there was probable cause to establish that a violation of Foreign Agents Registration Act had occurred. FARA, they call it. And we even had a jury. They had, let's say, several typical Generation Z white women, several sisters in equal number, some black men. If there was a shortage, I think it was white men on the jury, but they found probable cause, and we were looking at those laptops. And this clown actually had some White House tapes on that laptop. The technician had downloaded them, tried to get the FBI interested in it. They weren't. His father was in national security with the military and was alarmed when he reviewed it. And they wound up getting one of Trump's lawyers to look at it because the stuff was so dangerous. Now, eventually, after you download it, there was a 6 a.m. raid by the FBI where they seized him. But he downloaded it, and Giuliani and other people and the European intelligence community got it. We looked at it, and the White House tapes are not just voice. They have video, and there's some stuff in there that's extraordinary. I mean, that's aside from the salacious stuff. He's, let's put it this way, well hung, and he thought he was a porn star, so he was trying to do amateur porn movies with some interesting sex partners in there. So aside from that, the emails back and forth between himself and his father, where the father is inquiring, did you get your clients to look in the box? They might find what they're interested in. And then we found out at least 42 occasions there were people that the Secret Service now refuses to identify who were noted as being of foreign citizenship who visited. The contents were changed, and under the Constitution, the vice president had no authority, but in a case known as United States Department of Navy versus Egan, EGAN, 1988. When you look at the concurring opinions that Google is hidden, but they're available, it is clear that under the Constitution, as chief diplomat of the country and as commander-in-chief of the military, the president may classify or declassify any document he chooses to declassify or classify. I said that partly or completely in any form, shape, or fashion he chooses. Now, one of the things that comes out from the laptops is there's a high probability that the documents that are supposed to have been nominally turned over to the archivist have some very condemning evidence against the Obama-Biden administration. Now, that act of Congress, he's clearly in violation of, but the solution to that is Marbury versus Madison, 1803. That is 221 years ago. The U.S. Supreme Court said a U.S. president could ignore an unconstitutional act of Congress or unconstitutional provisions with impunity, and courts have the authority to declare legislative acts unconstitutional. So that involved President Madison and what Madison thought was an unconstitutional act of Congress. So that there is a provision in this statute about archivists and what they can do that clearly flies in the face of the president's constitutional authority. And if you apply Navy versus Egan, he hasn't committed any crime. And that's another example of naivete here in the practice or the administration of law. So it's also political, and it's what the Bill of Rights was designed to prevent. But that's an aside. So that being said, we have to take all of this with a grain of salt, and we have to look at what's actually going on in this 92-page indictment. Is it, in fact, an investigation resulting in charges of criminal activity against the public peace, dignity, and order of the state of Georgia? Or is it, in fact, an act of political oppression because somebody exercised what has long been protected under the First Amendment in a series of cases going back 230 years in United States history? So what is the jury going to do when they walk in and see these two clowns being involved in this process? The state of Georgia won't get a fair hearing.
So they basically muddied the water completely. I wanted to ask you also, because of the relationship between Fani Willis and the judge, why didn't, I don't know why they didn't recuse it.
That happens all the time.
Yeah. And then I looked for a change of venue at least.
Well, yeah, but you see, that doesn't count because it's like, okay, you ever run into any of your colleagues, go out for a few holes of golf and they put $500 a hole down, or man, you can't play tennis, man. I can show you how to play tennis, man. I'm Arthur Ashe, man. And then they go out and who big money on the outcome. See, you can be acquainted and be serious rivals. History is replete with knights or men-at-arms. You know, they had dinner and a feast and everything, and then went out and tried to slaughter each other the next day.
Yeah.
You know, the prize fighters come out and touch hands. George Foreman and Ali were great friends. I talked. Joe Frazier and Ali were great friends. Didn't keep them from beating the crap out of each other in the ring. But, you know, see, the legal profession is restricted. You might have 350, 500, 1,000. You might have 50 people in the legal profession, and they went to law school together. They live in the same town. They've gone to the same clubs. They once worked in the prosecutor's office or the public defender's office, or they most commonly, they had a trial with co-defendants or co-plaintiffs. So you got 7, 8 different lawyers involved over 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, in my case, 50 years. And after folk you started off with died, and then somebody that's in there is the grandchild that you first met unofficially when he was 9 months old, so you know each other. There's nothing wrong with that. And the way this thing works is you just contribute to good government. You have a First Amendment right to do this. So Fannie Mae Willis, or Fannie Willis, is running for an office as judge. So he's a practicing lawyer. You think this would be a fair judge and deliver justice, you give her a contribution. That doesn't mean later on that things might not alter. See, he holds an office. He is the court. You're not supposed to say, I don't think you're doing this right. You say, the court thinks perhaps that you're not doing this right. The court is of the impression. You don't say, I am of the impression. You don't say, I have a question. The court has a question. And a lot of folk can't get it. They keep getting personal. It's like the king,
I like that you said that.
It's like the king is dead. Long live the king. The office of king keeps on. So the occupant 3 hours ago is now dead. And the new person who is the heir is alive. So the king is dead. Long live the king.
Live the king.
That's why Cosby's verdict was set aside, because the district attorney who represented that office declared that there was no intent to prosecute him. And in this civil matter, he was compelled to give evidence. Now, the next DA campaigned that she wasn't going to let that happen. So she revoked the immunity and used the statement that Cosby relied to the previous DA's representation to his detriment and gave, and so did the civil trial judge. So the Court of Appeal said, no way, you can't use that. It's not you, lady, it's the office. So that's the same thing here. We've got two things going. These proceedings right now touch on a criminal case where the defendants are entitled to have the proof against them established beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty, if it is to have any effect at all. There are civil matters going on, which is essentially, are these two attorneys who are supposed to be officers of the court to be permitted under the circumstances to go forth, and that's civil, with a different set of proofs, well, a different standard of proof, which is by the preponderance of the evidence, or more likely than not, in other words, not beyond a reasonable doubt. I wrote the charge for reasonable doubt for the state of Tennessee. And it was, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, even if you believe the defendants have committed or the defendant committed the crime charged, you must acquit him if you have any doubt that's reasonable that he did not. Any logical, rational, reasonable, analytical application of the human mind that develops an alternative to that advanced by the state in its attempt to seek guilt of the defendant, if you find there are any such, you must reject their contention that the defendant is guilty. So in other words, if there's anything out of it, that's reasonable doubt. But for civil matters, by the preponderance of the evidence, or translated more likely than not, if you find it's got to go that way for the criminal court where the scale is all the way on the ground, there's no doubt to it. If it's just this little bit more one way in establishing the civil burden, and what did you get here? Are these officers of the court those people in whom the court and the public can maintain confidence? Answer, no. Now, you see, by the way, the judge doesn't have to consider what is being offered because he's the trier of fact. He's the jury. But what you do have is one of the witnesses who's not been impeached says this affair friend girl talking to me back in 19. And friend girl is an officer of the court. All right. Now, you have this other proof in there contradicts. But
yes.
then you get into stuck on stupid. You had to open your mouth. And instead of saying, all right, we concede, we've had this relationship, it's improper. You get an unofficial or, well, an official, but unpublished private reprimand from the bar. You might even get a public admonition, but you don't lose your law license.
Which they stand to do in this case.
Oh, yeah, big time. And see, you also stuck on stupid. Look, this man was president of the United States of America. You don't think he maintains connections with NSA, CIA, the phone companies, and
absolutely
people who can flip him or tip them off on what they have? And let me say something about this, since everybody has one of these things. Under American law, if you send a text to somebody and you erase it within 48 hours, it's dead. It belongs to the person you sent it to. They can do what they want, but the record's gone under law. If you don't erase it within 48 hours, they have to maintain the record for 60 days minimum on verbatim on what you sent as a text. Now, if you call, anybody can intercept it, but damn near every text message is encrypted one way or the other. You send an email, which everybody likes to do, that's 35-year-old technology. And it's like a postcard. If it goes through the post office, anybody that handles it can read it if they want to.
Wow.
That's not like a sealed letter. So just be aware of that. So you have all these texts and you're not keeping up with what comes out about this, that, and the other person had their text records because they shot up a school check for the last so many and all of the stuff on the cell phones and everything else. See, stuck on stupid. You put your butt on the witness stand and everything you say relative to these issues, your communications, can be verified. There are hotel records, by the way, in the DC area. There's TSA in terms of the records on who got on an airplane when and who was sitting next to who. So, you know, we haven't heard the last of that, but that's got nothing to do with Trump at all, other than as a matter of impeachment. But it does have a great deal to do with potential future criminal liability of Mr. Wade and Ms. Willis.
And this has completely muddied the entire pool, as it were. The entire swimming pool is now so full of doubt, and that no matter what happens after this, and I say it because they have so many different points. If they can't get them on, you know, the perjury about their relationship, well, they're certainly going to have some questions about the taxes. They're certainly going to have questions with regards to Wade coming out saying, well, I used my credit card. She paid me back cash, but then there's nowhere to show me that you've taken the money and repaid your corporation.
Now let me point something out too. This is a woman who testified she was broke after trying to finance her campaign, right?
And
okay, do you know what they pay a DA?
No, I don't.
Around here is less. It's around 180,000 a year.
Oh, wow.
So in other words, she and boyfriend get to split $695,000 so far earned in 14 months of just expense claims. And this matter hadn't even been set for trial. So they split it. That's a hell of an uptick on her income. Now, most of the time, most lawyers are not what a lot of people think, what they're multimillionaires. No, they don't work that. It doesn't work that way. It's hard earning this living. And a lot of times a lawyer is stuck with how is he going to cover the check that the secretary's got, checks, you know, and making ends meet. And he's got all his bills. So lawyers are well off, comfortably middle class, upper middle class. Very few of them are into corporate law where they have large mega entities that make money when they have large legal expenses in terms of tax deductions. So they promote billable hours where you need to bill me a little bit more, it'll drop my tax liability. Okay. And you see, we have this civil lawyer, and civil lawyers take courses on how to maximize billable hours. So you've got a whole different process. I remember at one judicial conference, I raised all kinds of hell. They were talking about whether the minimum hourly rate to reimburse somebody handling a divorce for somebody would be $250 an hour or $350 an hour. And this was 30 years ago. I said, like the hell you do. You just authorized an application here to pay defense counsel on a first-degree murder case, where this lawyer with a doctorate degree, these requirements under Tennessee law to have had so many trials before they are qualified for appointment, you want to pay them less than they'd get working at Mickey D's. You have lost your bloody mind. Jesus Christ, Judge Brown, we hadn't thought of that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. See, so you have $695,000
yes,
already paid out, and we have not even set the matter for trial. You're talking about somebody making several $1 million courtesy of Fulton County in the state of Georgia out of this for a broke, busted DA who's got a Dodge going. Is it a false Dodge now that they've broken up, or are they still exchanging money? Are they sleeping together, or is that something that's just supposed to be on the wayside because the divorce is getting hot and heavy? You see.
I want to ask you, Judge, was the visits that were made to the White House questionable? And if so, why?
Oh, yes, because you see what's going on is you've got one party in interest. Is the Biden administration a witness? No. What's their interest in it? Who knows? Is the DNC paying you some of this money that you are giving to Wade? Because remember, you're paying him back. He's paying it out, but you claim with no receipts, no documents, and no visible source for this $2,400, $5,800 you're paying him back for Belize. And, you know, the other thing that gets me, I think it's a lie, because guess what? I've been a judge, and back in the 1990s, mid-1990s, excuse me, let's see, it's the state's position that this person passed through the metal detectors and they had showing $2,600 in cash. So this was supposed to provide probable cause to pull this man's luggage so you could inspect it, and thereby you found the contraband. The court is not going to allow compliance with American law or simply having money in pocket to establish probable cause. You go through an international checkpoint with cash in that amount instead of not traveler's checks anymore, debit
card or something. Yeah.
Somebody's going to ask you what you're doing.
You need to declare it, right?
By the way, this was down in Belize. It's outside the country. So you see, when you walk through the metal detectors, they also pick up the Mylar strips in 5, 10, 20s, 50s, 100s, etc. So they can count how much money you have in the pocket. That's sometimes why they sit there and look at it. Now, this was 30 years ago they were doing this. And I had motions in front of me to suppress based on what they came up with. I didn't practice law anymore then. My former partners did, and a popular case still is. John Doe versus $8,624 in American currency. Why? Because they'll seize it and let you explain how you got it. Now, you have 10 days to, maybe 10 days, I'd say, on caution, 15 maybe, to make a claim to get your money restored, because they sure will snatch it. So how do they manage to have these large sums of cash? And you walking around, and the other thing was preposterous. She claimed she paid cash at the restaurants. Now, today, you carry cash to a restaurant with the high crime going on in Atlanta, Georgia, and you don't have a MasterCard, Visa, American Express in your pocket to pay for this. I mean, it's one thing if somebody says, I want reimbursement, I put this on Visa. You don't have any of that. So you have somebody saying cash. Now, I know John Floyd, daddy. He made a mistake because we used to talk about this back when and make jokes about it in the student union. It's called back money. It ain't a black thing. It's a woman thing. Translation, what they're talking about is back money. What that is money in the cookie jar for a rainy day. Every woman in the world understands that. America. So what it is the joke at the time was when a guy said he's broke, says he's broke. When a woman says she's broke, she's just down to her back money. See, that got nothing to do with black. He was trying to help daughter out, but I think it was something that was a little excessive. It didn't go over well.
Well, you know, Judge, they just came out with CNN just came out and said, well, hey, listen, we found a server that was in Napa Valley, I believe. You guys in the chat, correct me if I'm incorrect, if it was not Napa Valley, that says that server said, I remember waiting on them, and she paid in cash as if that was going to save them. I feel like there's so many people.
It makes it worse.
It makes it worse because they're trying so desperately to make this thing stick that if everybody just lifted up their hands and backed up, they could have been done with this, as you stated earlier, and as I shared last week with the chat. And my impression, just as Judge just said, all somebody had to do in the very beginning was say, yeah, this is how I saw it. Yeah, we were messing around. And I have to be honest with you now that you bring this up. We did. Was it a bad situation? Should we have maybe thought about it a little more? We should have. But yes, we were dating. We will step out and let the rest of the team go. Or we lay at your mercy, however you want to do this. Do you want us to leave? Do you want to keep the rest of the team? Do you want to bring in somebody else? However you guys want to handle it, we'll be transparent and honest and say at this point, we just need to back out. There's another issue.
Let me add.
Go ahead, please.
Now, the typical person out there would say, yeah, well, that just backs her up. She's telling the truth. You spent cash in Napa, California.
Come on now.
For a restaurant tab. Why did you do that? You know what? From my experience representing a whole lot of criminals over the years and presiding over this stuff as a criminal court judge, you know what that indicates?
What?
They had cash that came in under the table they couldn't put in a bank, so they had a lot of extra cash in hand, which indicates they were involved in kickbacks, bribes, criminality. They had money that they had not yet been able to launder. When she pays him back, she's supposedly paying him for something. He can put it in the bank. He's the one that receipted everything. She didn't. So the bottom line is she can't, because she doesn't have that much income. Less than 200K is her salary, probably closer to $160,000, $180,000. So what the devil happens with you getting all this money? You pay cash, you pull it out of your purse. And remember, she's worried about getting jacked up too, because how many times did she testify about her security waiting out front? So you're going to say you had $15,000 in cash in your house. Where did you get it from? Where did you get the cash that you're spending on a restaurant tab? I mean, who pays cash these days?
Especially to the tune of $400.
Yeah.
And listen, as a woman, and as she wants to run and say black woman or, whatever. As a woman, if I got to pull out $400 to pay for a meal, I am totally not doing it. I'm just going to be honest. If a man and I are out, I'm not pulling out no cash and I'm not pulling out nothing. That's just me.
That's laundry. In other words, both of them have a lot of cash and they are trying to spend it rather than putting it on credit cards.
Absolutely.
Why? because he and his wife were going through an acrimonious divorce, and there's alimony and all that other stuff. You don't want it on his credit card where she can drag it up like she did to hotel accommodations in other towns.
Now, Judge, before, I've got maybe one more big story that I want to ask you about. And in this particular case, before we close out this, I want to say this and let you chime in. This whole entire case, as it has now evolved, because what started out just dealing specifically.
Wait a minute, it's not a case yet.
Well, not a case
It's
yet.
a hearing on
the circumstance, the hearing.
No, it's a hearing on an administrative motion.
It's a hearing on an administrative
motion to remove the district attorney's office and Mr. Wade.
Okay.
It's
it started out as this, but now they've woven it into this big tapestry of nothing but things that they can all be attacked and poked for and taken away for and losing their license for. And it really does not make any sense that they would have opted to do the things that they've done, because now they've opened up, because of the perjury piece, they've opened up a bevy. I mean, it's like a Pandora's box of stuff that can potentially harm all of them. Now, there is something that I don't understand, and it's nothing to do with them, but it has everything to do again with Trump. And what I've shared with everybody just recently was, I believe that when we're looking at this, we can put ourselves in the position of John Q. Public, because some would say, well, I don't care about them sleeping together, and I don't care about this, and I believe that Trump is this and that, and I don't want to talk about any of these things because that's their lives and has nothing to do with me. I think that it's precedence whenever you can have a circumstance like this take place and you don't learn anything from it. It could be that if it wasn't them, it could be you. So now they've set up this nice little foundation for what can happen if. And by this, I'm segueing now over to none other than Letitia James and Judge Engoron in New York. A lot of people wanted to understand, how could Trump have to pay $355 million for a victimless crime? Another portion and question and statement has been, how can Engoron then go on to say, hey, listen, here's another issue. I don't think your, and I want you to help me with this one, I don't think your property is worth that. I think you're inflating those numbers. And because you're inflating those, come on.
Let me go right there.
Come on.
I write you a check, personal check. You take it to the bank, you cash it, you get your money, you're happy. Enterprising DA doesn't like me, comes in and says, Joe Brown wrote you, doctor, a bad check. No, he didn't. I cashed it. I got my money. No, he didn't. He wrote you a bad check. We're going to indict him. Oh, we're not going to indict him. It's a civil matter. We don't have to establish probable cause. All we have to do is make the complaint. You don't have to convince the grand jury of anything. And in front of the civil proceeding, in front of an idiot judge, you come up with, he wrote this woman a bad check. And I call you. You get on the stand and say, I got the check. It was not post dated. I took it to the bank, your bank, and I got my cash. I'm satisfied. So later on, the judge says, I find he wrote doctor a bad check. Wait a minute, where's the proof? You see, he's acting as a trier of fact, and one of the weaknesses of what he did is his verdict is inconsistent with the proof. There is no proof that there was an impropriety. The bank testified, we always do it this way. That's standard business practice. But the judge said it's not. The bank said, we've dealt with Mr. Trump before many times. We've made a lot of money. He's always paid on time and the interest as well. You're saying, no, he was trying to trick you, etc. So where is his proof? This is something he chose to interject. And from my look at it as a jurist, I'd say he's one of these compromised hacks who is looking at the possibility of getting an appellate appointment and a job for life. And he doesn't care because he's got a political agenda. Now, next thing that goes in, he says Malargo, the golf course, is way overflated. It's only worth $18 million. Well, there are vacant lots around the golf course that are going for 10 plus million. And the little bungalow around the place is 18 million. So what about the country club? Where I lived, there was one down the street, $65 million that was paid for 25 years ago for that. And it wasn't anything like looking out over the glorious ocean. They had 11,000 head of cattle on 36,000 acres.
Wow.
And that was yet to be developed. That was just the purchase price for the rights to the land. Now, you want to tell somebody that this exclusive upscale golf course isn't worth but 18 million. And by the way, it's not even in the state of Texas. It's in Florida. It's
Correct.
just part of the collateral. So see, his verdict is inconsistent with the evidence. There was nothing to substantiate what he came up with. It's garbage. And the whole purpose can be reasonably interpreted under the facts as being for the sole purpose of depriving a good portion of the American public of the opportunity to consider certain somebody from being chief executive of the United States of America. That's not what we have the Bill of Rights for. And that's why the Bill of Rights exists, is to prevent that from happening. Now, back to these clowns again. What in the devil are you doing? You don't have the way to launder the money, so you spend cash. Okay, that's bad enough. How about this one? You got a flat broke, busted DA who's got political problems, who compromises her bad economic status by acquiring a new 4-bedroom house. And she can get a big chunk of $650,000 to $700,000 before this matter goes to trial, which will be several times her income if she and boyfriend split it and she gets him appointed, and she's in the unique position of being able to okay his claims with nobody going back on her.
Wow.
Now, that's what I'd come up with as a criminal judge. I said, look at what you're doing. I think I like to go to Jamaica. I haven't been in a few years, but I've been 15, 20, 25 times over the years. They got to say, hey, man, she be acting like she got guilty knowledge, man. The way they did, the demeanor, the bearing, the mode, manner, and fashion of testifying, her body language, how she acted on the stand.
Oh, yeah.
The juries are instructed to consider those things when assessing credibility of the witness. And in my experience, that's associated with somebody who's trying to use bombast to cover for some wrongdoing. So I'm thinking, hey, she needed the money. She appointed boyfriend. He has billed with no criminal experience at all. None. No trial work so far.
Let alone any RICO experience.
Yeah. Almost $700,000, and you want to tell me with all this cash changing hands that she ain't getting a piece of the action? That's kickback, which is a crime, by the way. Felony.
I wanted to, before we close, I do want to, there's somebody that, and I'm going back to Letitia James, for whatever reason, I've just not been able to really deal with Letitia James. I've got the sunshine coming in. We're here down in the Tennessee Valley, and I like this window open. Much to my chagrin, it's shining down on me. Nonetheless, I want to talk about Letitia James. The first thing,
the highest paid person in the United States government's employ is CEO of Tennessee Valley Authority. He's paid $8.5 million a year.
Wow. Whoa. Sounds like, oh, wow. Okay. Listen, here is Letitia James saying that what she wanted to do was to pretty much, take Trump's buildings to pay for the penalty. I'd like for you to break this whole thing down for me with them, because for whatever reason, there's something about this case.
Factoid interlocutory appeal with the whole matter, everything stopping until the appellate court deals with it. His lawyers are going to file a motion in front of the New York appellate courts. They're not going to let this go, because that would be irreparable harm. And even if they were to say you're full of crap, which this judge was,
where did they get this guy from? I mean, you mentioned it, but I'm like, goodness gracious, who is this guy?
What this dude do? And he's doing like Fanny, rolling his eyes, like, really? We're not on TV.
Well, here we have, this comes from Newsmax, and it's just basically saying Letitia James eyes Trump's buildings to pay for
in New York
penalty.
City, former President Trump dealing with the aftermath, even still, of that civil fraud verdict where he has to pay now more than $350 million in fines. Not only that, the former president is expected to pay more than $87,000 a day until the fine is paid.
That all adds up. And quick. Host of Sunday Report, John Glasgow, joins us now live. Now, John, despite the judge's ruling, Trump appears to be getting some good financial news. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, you would think with all this bad news, good news. What? Well, Donald Trump, he's been plotting a return to Wall Street since leaving office, but there have been years of delays in regulatory and legal hurdles. Now this is on the verge of becoming a reality, and it could make Trump a fortune. Former president wants to merge his media platform, Truth Social, with another company and then go public. If approved by shareholders, Trump would make billions since he owns 79 million shares in the company. So according to Forbes, Truth Social share was worth around $100 million last year, despite losing money since 2022. Becoming a publicly traded company, it could earn Trump as much as $4 billion as of today. U.S. regulators greenlit a controversial merger between Truth Social and a separate company named Shares of Digital World after the SEC removed that major obstacle holding the deal back. Well, stock in the Shares of Digital World nearly tripled this year and is currently trading at about $50 a share. This is partly fueled by Trump's political success in the Republican presidential primary, and now this merger progress. Trump media CEO Devin Nunes wrote in a statement saying, Truth Social was created to serve as a safe harbor for free expression and to give people their voices back. Moving forward, we aim to accelerate our work to build a free speech highway outside the stifling stranglehold of big tech. So this all comes as Trump is on the hook for that $355 million fine that the judge ruled him liable for inflating his assets. The former president now has 30 days from the court ruling to come up with the money. If Trump doesn't, New York Attorney General Letitia James says she's coming for his New York real estate. Watch.
If he doesn't have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
She gives me the willies.
Stop a second. This is supposed to be another person knowledgeable of American law, New York law. She's never heard of an appeal.
Thank you. It's as if it's all done, Judge. It's just the nail is in the coffin and it's all finished. We're done.
Yeah, like this is a pronouncement that is unethical, and she actually is subject to bar sanction for it if somebody wanted to be strict about the application of the rules, because she is intentionally misleading the public as to what the law is, because she's trying to derail somebody that her political party has is an obvious opponent. So, in other words, she's trying to give the impression that it's all over. We ruined him. See how much he did wrong. If it wasn't something wrong, do you think we'd get $385 million? Well, if you look at her, you look at Tammy, you look at that idiot judge that handled the case. And I call him that because I think he's
I agree.
The profession. Now, bottom line is that see, that's inappropriate because there is this thing called an appeal. And, you know, that's the New York appellate courts. Then you can go to federal courts on the appeal, and there's the Federal District Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, and the U.S. Supreme Court, and all of the rest of that. So this is a long way from going off. Like, for example, Walt Disney and ABC in 2001 got sued by the people that did So You Want to Be a Millionaire. They fooled around with the appeal until 2011, when the Ninth Circuit said, oh, we don't think they asked for enough money. We're going to make it $560 million rather than what they were asking for, $7 million. We're putting punitive damages in there. Now that's why you had the Black Panther movie and Wakanda too, because ABC and Disney were counting on their Negroes to go flock in and give great give cash flow so they could pay off the interest. You see where that goes, 560 million versus 385 million. And that one, this is now not 2011, this is 2024, and they haven't even paid all of the accrued interest yet. So
Wow.
it just doesn't work that way. So she's doing a disservice as a judicial legal officer, misleading the public.
I hate to keep dancing around, but I'm going back over some notes, and I wanted to ask you something, because this has something going back to Wade and Willis.
Go
The
ahead.
interrogatories that were, no, not even the interrogatories. Last year in May, somebody other than Bradley, after Bradley was done being his attorney for the divorce, and by his, I mean Willis, somebody other than Bradley, the alleged attorney of record at that time, went in and changed documents. And now, based on what we saw last week, how does that affect Bradley? Because Bradley sat there in the court and he goes, no, I didn't sign anything. And he goes, so you remember that? Do you remember that?
Translation. Georgia's RICO statute covers that, where there is a concerted enterprise to conceal ill-gotten funds and income. So it looks like somebody is trying to conceal something from the civil court handling Wade's divorce. It looks like it has a great deal to do with where this money came from. And since people seem to be acting in concert, you're prosecuting one man for a RICO violation, and you've already testified the elements of the RICO violations in question yourself that you've committed, or you implicated yourself in it and raised a reasonable inference, which is sufficient to create probable cause to return indictments against you and Mr. Wade for RICO activity. Dumb crook thing.
Well, Judge, I want to tell you, you have been, now I've got the grants. Get out. You can't be seen on YouTube without me hitting a button that says you're here. We're going to close, and I'm just ever thankful that you are here with me and that you've answered a lot of the questions that a lot of folks have posed in the comments. I'm glad that you were here to sort of shed light on exactly, not sort of, but shed light and then some of everything that's going on with this whole entire debacle out of Georgia. I want to say this before we close, folks, and I've said this before, the behavior of all of the women that we talked about on this show, from the Dalton County mayor, or Dalton mayor in Illinois, embarrassing, totally embarrassing. Fani Willis, embarrassing. It reminds me of watching a movie, Judge, and while you're watching that movie, you're seeing all of these different Black folk in the movie, and you're hoping that the crime wasn't committed by them in the end. You don't want to be embarrassed.
It's like a Hollywood blaxploitation movie updated to the current.
What you talking about? What you talking about?
Let me say, and I'm not a Southern gentleman like Mr. Wade.
Like him, yeah.
Oh,
I was thinking to
man.
myself, she's so, And it's so embarrassing because, like I said, and I've got my avatar on you guys because of the sun. But, there was something that I said. I was like, I really wanted to be happy for her. I really, really wanted to be happy for all of these people who've made these great strides and these alleged achievements and all the things. But when you are an idiot and when you are someone who is obviously doing things that is against the law and contrary to what's right and fair and balanced and equitable, then I have no choice but to get you like I get somebody else. And I'm not going to stand down because of the shade of a person's skin. I want to know before we leave, I'm going to play your commercial once more, but I'd like you to share with folks something that, maybe they need to know about what you've got going on and how they can help with any campaigns of any possibility. And when I say campaigns, I don't mean political. I mean anything or efforts that Judge is working on. I want him to share that. And just share if it's not about you, somebody you want us to know about, as well as the Amazon. We're going to do the commercial and then we're going to come right back and we're going to hear the things that Judge wants to share with us. Hey everyone, it's me, Felicia, of the Lockhart Perspective and Headlines with a Voice. I want to tell you a little secret. This is what I used to do because I don't do it anymore. I would go to the store, buy the barbecue sauce, pour it inside of a bowl, put a whole bunch of different spices, a dash of brown sugar, a dash of maple, and a dash of mustard, stir it all around, and everybody would be like, oh my gosh, this is the best, this is the best. But I was exhausted after all of that, and a lot of times I couldn't remember how many dashes of what I put in it. But I don't have to do that anymore because now I just go to Judge Joe Brown's website and I order his 3-pack of bottled barbecue sauce. It is by far the best, and I do mean the best barbecue sauce I've ever eaten. And when you go to his website and you order his 3-pack, you'll see exactly what I mean. Head on over to jjbbbbq.com and order Judge Joe Brown's barbecue sauce. You'll be glad you did, and you're going to tell me about it. I know you will. Go on over, and you can also go to Amazon now because you can purchase the deliciousness that is Judge Joe Brown's barbecue sauce that's now available on Amazon. So which isn't that there where they can deliver it to your house? Is that from their grocery store or from actual Amazon, which means they can get as much as they want?
Mm-hmm. And see, if you go jjbbbbq.com, judgejoebrownbarbecue.com. You can order. We have packages of sauce, seasoning going along with it, links. You can order that too. You can order that directly, or you can go to Amazon, and if you have one of their special accounts, you get free delivery. And that's one of the most expensive parts of ordering it online from us is the delivery costs are kind of high these days. And by the way, you didn't mention it, but this strikers thing is going to cost New York, so you better order it through Amazon so you can get it without spending the whole twice the price for the shipping.
Well, Judge, now that you mentioned that, I do have a quick question because I know that Grant Cardone, I mentioned that a little earlier on in the show where Grant Cardone said, you know what, New York, I'm done. And then they said, okay, all the truckers say we're done. And then you've even got Mr. Wonderful, who's a real estate investor. And he's saying, we're done. Nobody's doing anything with you guys anymore. And so
you elected this guy and you keep him in office. You paid a price. Be careful who you vote for.
Be careful who you vote for. And I think that solidifies everything. Be careful who you vote for because go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I talk a lot, that's what I do these days.
I love it.
I'm one of those old entertainers sit around the campfire, the chief, and he tells all the assembled folk about the stories.
I love it.
Help it. But you asked the question. Let's see. You can catch me on X at Judge Joe Brown TV. And they shadow blocked me, they claim I only have about 86,000 or 84,000 followers, but other folk accuse me of having a cult, but that's another thing. We get shadow blocked. You can also find me on X Space, that's Twitter Space, on Tuesdays in the afternoon. I'm with The Real Dana on a show she produces and directs. You can get that Monday. We do a Man Up thing on Thursday. Also, I do a thing under my name with Valerie Denise Jones. I'm going to have to get to that in a short while. On Friday, it's a call-in. It's 929-477-1167. 929-477-1167. And you can listen to it. It's also syndicated on iHeart and a number of other stations. Now, we try to spread the word, and that's what I've been about. I've been retired for a long time, so I have to stay busy. I do things, and I'm single, so when I'm not trying to find somebody to go to dinner with or whatever it may be, I write, I observe, and I report. Now, there may be some TV in the future with me doing some political commentary. And by the way, that was my major at UCLA. After I got from physics, I went to political science. So that's my major. And then there's law. I also got that from there too. So considering what's going on today and the lack of practical experience on behalf of most of the commentators in and about law and its impact, might have a future in that. You know, I don't like to sit at home and do nothing, and I refuse to allow that to happen. So I have to stay busy, keep myself out of mischief, you know.
Well, you know what, folks, down at the bottom, you'll see Judge Joe Brown on Block Talk with Valerie Denise Jones. The phone number to go and call in and speak and have your voice heard is area code 929-477-1167. Again, the number ticker tape down on the bottom, 929-477-1167. That's for Judge Joe Brown's talk show that he has weekly. He's about to go over there in a little bit. When you call that number, you don't have to talk if you don't want to, but if you choose to, you simply follow the prompts and it'll let you know exactly what you
Well,
want.
it's not going to
Great show.
change because we get a lot of people doing it. We have people from all over the world, London,
Everywhere.
Sydney, and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Press 1 if you want to get in the K.
Okay.
Usually, if you're already online, which will close down at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard, we'll be on another hour.
Mhm.
And what winds up happening is we have what she calls the Hunger Games. All lines are open and just be polite. But also Miss Dana, the real
awesome
Dana.
show. Awesome show.
I know her. She's a good friend of mine. She calls me daddy off the record, but you know, she likes to fuss and she does her job, and I'm entertained as well. So that's Monday and Thursday. We do a Man Up thing on Thursday, and she's always the primary host, and I'm the co-host for a Twitter space, X space, on Tuesday in the afternoon or early evening.
Well, I'm putting that in. I'm putting it in. Here's the link. Here's the link.
That's the call in.
Yeah, there's the link on inside of the chat. There's the link for The Real Dana. You'll see Judge Joe Brown. Mm-hmm.
Okay. The Real Dana. She does her research. She's caustic.
She's caustic.
But I don't mind. I get on her when we're off air.
Well, I love it. I'm very happy that you were here. It looks like the clouds are now covering the sun, so I'm back to normal almost.
Oh, we get to look at your pretty self, Doc.
Well, I so appreciate that so very much. You make me blush, and I appreciate you. I want to help in any way that I can. We are running those commercials from here on out, folks, because summer is coming, don't you know? And we all know we love a good barbecue. I know I do. And you know, you probably are a lot like us. In our family, we have, relatives in Mississippi, they're great gifts as well. If you got somebody who's getting a place and they just got their first apartment or first house or whatever, take them that. You don't have to take any wine. Well, you might want to take some wine, but you definitely want to take some of the barbecue sauce. We are going to be considered one of the standard sponsors of this awesome product because it tastes good. He took a lot of time to put a lot of effort in it. And I want everybody today to please go. If you don't buy nothing but 1 or 2 jars, please go buy 1 or 2 bottles of that delicious barbecue sauce. Hit me up and let me know that you've done it. Hit me up. Let me know that you've done that. And then if you have Amazon, you guys, go ahead and do it. I am into promoting people who do good things, and I'm not apologetic for it. Judge, thank you so very much for being with me. It is always a blessing and always a pleasure to have you.
One
I
other
hope you come
benefit,
back.
if
Yes,
your
sir.
credit is so bad you can't get a credit card and you got to carry around large sums of cash in your pocket, you can safely eat at home and do it yourself without running the risk of getting hijacked. And, if you don't have a CCW handgun carry permit and you don't live in the constitutional carry state, you don't have to be worried, nervous, looking and checking yourself to see who's going to snatch you. But anyway.
It's always a pleasure, Judge. God bless you. You take care of yourself, and we will see one another soon. Whenever you want to come back, please let me know. And I'm always going to reach out because you've been a blessing to everyone, answering questions intelligently, giving us truthful answers, which is the most important thing that in all of our getting, we must get understanding. And we thank you for imparting that wisdom and understanding to us, kind sir. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Awesome, awesome, awesome time again to spend with Judge Joe Brown. Awesome. I want you guys to share this out if you can. And if you can't share it out, go to that website and buy some barbecue sauce. If you can't share it out, do something, because remember, we need to support the people that give us information. He's giving information, he's teaching, he's talking, he's giving us knowledge, and that ain't for free. So please do something kind, and that is go right over there right now, order his barbecue sauce. And yeah, I'm going to keep on saying it. So if you're tired of me saying it, baby, you better get real comfortable, because I'm going to keep sharing it with you guys. Listen, you guys know what we always say here. I want you to make sure that you take care of yourselves, because if you don't take care of yourself, nobody else will. And then after you're done taking care of yourself, you can reach around and take care of somebody else. You really can. Then after you take care of them, then you make sure that you do one big favor for me, and that is take care of my friend, because my friend is you. Be blessed. To receive instant notification each time I upload, please hit the subscribe button and the bell notification.
Helping